Hafide and good morning. Thank you everybody for being with us today. Today's date is February 4th, 2026. This morning's joint oversight hearing held by the Committee on Education, Libraries, and Public Broadcasting is called to order. The time is now 9:01. Before we begin, there's some housekeeping matters that I'll briefly discuss so we get right to work. The first notice of this joint oversight hearing was disseminated to all senators and media outlets on January 27, 2026, with the second notice disseminated on February 2nd, 2026. Notices of this hearing were also made available on Candid News Group, the legislature's website, our legislative calendar, and the Government of Guam's public notice portal. Today's joint oversight hearing is being broadcasted live on the Guam Legislature's YouTube channel, and the transcript will be filed with the Committee on Rules and be made available on the Guam Legislature's website. Today, our committee will hear the following agenda regarding the Guam Department of Education and the Guam Education Board. The hearing will focus on the Guam Department of Education's leadership transition and departmental stability, financial management and fiscal accountability, facilities, maintenance and infrastructure needs, special education services and compliance, ADA accessibility and compliance requirements, teacher and staffing shortages. We'll also go into the audit oversight and accountability by the OPA and his 2024 audit findings, management audit observations, corrective actions, and responses to repeated findings, and then the GEB governance and community concerns, role of the Guam Education Board, transparency, accountability, and public trust, in that order. At this time, I now would like to welcome my colleagues who are joining us this morning: Senator Sabrina Salas-Matanani, Senator Sean Gumatautau, Senator Chris Duenas, and Senator Chris Barnett. Before we begin, we'd like to remind everybody in attendance of this Aturan Guahan's general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chairperson before speaking and shall state their full name for the record. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of today's agenda. Personal inferences to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying are not permitted. Pursuant to Section 11.07 of the 38 Guam Legislature Standing Rules, the chairperson may order the removal from a hearing of a committee or subcommittee of any person who is not a member of Ilas Laturan Guahan or who fails to observe proper decorum. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in immediate removal from this public hearing room. Now, since we've gotten that out of the housekeeping out of the way, Madam Superintendent and Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, please if it's just going to be you guys are going to bring your management team up, or any representatives who will be testifying so that we can swear them in. If they're going to sit, that we can still swear them in. So the Sergeant at Arms, if you can please proceed with swearing these individuals in, please. Anybody that may be called to answer any questions. Okay.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, you affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay. Mr. Chair, under oath, you may proceed.
Thank you. And we'll recognize Senator Teresa Lai, who is joining us as well. Before we begin with the presentation from GDOE and the OPA, I'll go ahead and do my opening. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the People's House. I want to briefly frame why this joint oversight hearing is being held and why this moment matters. We called this joint oversight hearing not to assign blame, but to confront longstanding challenges facing the Guam Department of Education and to ensure accountability, transparency, and stability moving forward. GDOE is one of the largest and most critical agencies in our government. It touches nearly every family on this island. When there's instability, whether in leadership, governance, communication, or fiscal management, the effects are felt immediately by our students, teachers, parents, and school communities. First, the department has recently gone through a significant leadership transition. Leadership transitions can bring new perspectives and opportunities, but they also create uncertainty. The public deserves clarity on how that transition was managed, what steps were taken to preserve institutional knowledge, how continuity of operations was maintained, and how critical functions from procurement to staffing to federal program compliance were protected during that period. We also need to understand how the leadership team is moving from assessment to action. Many of the challenges are not new. They've been identified in prior audits and reports for years. This moment requires not just an evaluation, but a clear vision, a concrete plan, and measurable next steps. Second, some of the concerns that we continue to hear, even prior to this administration, is internal communication and organizational cohesion. Staff has shared that they're unclear about the department's direction, that communication channels feel limited, and that there's a lack of alignment across divisions. A system as large and complex as GDOE cannot function effectively without clear expectations, regular coordination, and a shared understanding of priorities. Stability is not only structural, it's cultural. And to emphasize something that's important, whether we like it or not, the people who have carried this department through its most difficult years are its greatest assets. With all due respect, Superintendent, board members, you may serve for a season, but our teachers, school staff, and many of our department leaders have dedicated decades to this education system. They've remained through leadership changes, fiscal crisis, and system challenges, often despite government shortcomings, not because of government support. For GDOE to move forward, those voices must feel heard, valued, and informed. Communication cannot simply flow downward. It must be a two-way process that builds trust, honors institutional knowledge, and makes the people doing the daily work part of the solution. Third, the condition of our school facilities is not new. Our infrastructure remains a serious concern across the island. We continue to see campuses damage, deferred maintenance, and basic infrastructure issues, from leaking roofs to lighting, road access, and safety systems not being addressed in a timely manner. These are not cosmetic. They directly affect safety, learning conditions, and public confidence in our education system. And last, the Public Accountability's FY 2024 audit, along with the management audit, continues to raise recurring concerns related to fiscal controls, procurement delays, internal oversight, and governance practices. Many of these issues have been identified year after year. The public deserves to know not only what went wrong, but what is going to be done differently now to prevent those same findings from appearing again. We must address the importance of clear governance boundaries. Effective education systems depend on healthy balance where the board provides policy direction and oversight, and the superintendent manages day-to-day operation. When those lines are blurred, it creates confusion, delays, and instability. Clarifying those roles and strengthening accountability on both sides is essential to restoring trust and progress. Today, we're not here to assign blame or to choose sides. It's about clarity, accountability, continuity, and restoring stability in the best interest of our students. And with that, we'll begin with the first item on the agenda, which is the leadership transition and departmental stability. Superintendent, if you'd like to start, or I know you asked earlier if the board was going to do their opening first.
Thank you very much, Senator. If I may, since I have several of our board members here, if we can move down to the bottom of your agenda on the board's role to have our new chairperson of the board, Dr. Guthertz, address the body. Then Mr. Ada, also another board member, is here, and hopefully our vice chair, Dr. Akata, would join the other board members. And then we'll proceed with the other portions of the agenda.
That's fine. And colleagues, the way we're going to do the questioning is we'll have, after the board presents, you guys can ask your questions, and then we'll get into GDOE and the audit, if that's okay. Thank you. You can go ahead, Dr. Guthertz.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning, members of this legislature. It's a great honor to be here before you today. I sort of miss the environment, and it's always a good experience to see my former colleagues and those that I did not serve with doing so well for the people of Guam. Thank you very much for your service. About a week ago, my colleagues on the board elected me as the new chair for the Guam Board of Education. I must say I was hesitant to accept the nomination because I know it requires a lot of work and commitment, and I certainly do not ever want to shortchange the role of the board, especially in this important leadership position. But ultimately I accepted, and I've been thinking about it since then, and I think you'll see a different approach in terms of how I will work with my colleagues and the Department of Education on behalf of the children and the people of Guam. Let me first start and say that our department is far from perfect. I've been on the board since January of 2025. This now starts my second year on the board. I've been on the board in the past, notably under the leadership of Gloria Nelson and Ion Wolf, who were tremendous leaders in that department. And of course, at that time, we did not see many of the issues that we see today in our school system. But if I were to go back in time and identify when things at the Department of Education started to sort of deteriorate, I have to identify when we lost the Department of Defense students in our school system. They were a very important part of our student body. Losing them so quickly and so dramatically, despite our best efforts to intercede and try to accommodate their concerns, losing them so quickly had a significant impact on our school system. It changed the diversity of our student population at that time. It also resulted in the Department of Education losing a federal contribution of about $60 million a year. That's what they paid for their children to go to our public schools. That's when I believe our infrastructure started to deteriorate. We no longer had those extra funds, external funds, to help us maintain the schools properly. And over a period of years, based on circumstances beyond our control, the budgeted monies to keep up the infrastructure were inadequate. But that's history. And now we're in a different time. I'm very happy to report that over the last month, we have seen a different approach to the Department of Education with respect to our new superintendent and her management team. They have gone into the school system to look at everything and to identify up close the problems in the school system and how to resolve them. I know they stay at DOE long after working hours. The management teams meet to discuss their findings and start to evaluate solutions. This is not going to change things overnight, but just the attitude and the commitment that we are seeing from these management leaders, including our superintendent, tells me that things are changing already. It's a psychological change for employees in the department. And you know, I've been head of different agencies of the government, and I know change is hard. But at the Department of Education and throughout our government, the secret to success today is being flexible and being willing to accept change for the better. That's my motto as chair of the board. Now, I want to let you know I do not micromanage. And I have not seen board members micromanage, despite what you may have heard. But I will insist that our board recognize its role at all times. We're not a governance board the way the CCU is, the way the Utility Commission is. I interpret the law that currently exists as more of an advisory role, and that comes with shortcomings, I must tell you, because there's a lot of times we want to just go in there and say, you have to do this to fix this, but we can only advise. Fortunately, we have a superintendent who understands and accepts advice. And when she feels the advice may not be the way she would like to handle an issue, she talks to us and gives us alternatives. And that's important because we really didn't get that in the past, at least the last year I was there. But we have to work aggressively to make change at the Department of Education. Positive change that will benefit the students in the classroom and support the people of Guam and their goals for public education. We may not always agree with each other, but in the end, we will accept the advice that we get from our superintendent and our management team if it's founded on data and facts. This is very important. Making decisions in a large organization like the Guam Department of Education must be data-driven and fact-driven, with also a little emotion to respect certain values that we have on our island. But these are the kind of things that we're seeing start to move forward. And yes, you will get complaints. DOE, in my opinion, got lazy and used, not in the classroom, but used to expect and to allow missing deadlines, and not to feel the urgency of completing a process that is required for the department, whether it's paying vendors on time or addressing complaints from parents or concerns by stakeholders. We've got to be on top of that, and that's one of the changes that I'm seeing visibly now. I want to assure the Guam Department of Education employees that this board is there to support them, all of them, and their work. But they must do their work, and they must have a standard of performance that the public expects them to perform. One area of great interest to me includes travel. Too much travel has gone on at the Department of Education for too long. You will not find me traveling. I don't need to go anywhere to be the chair of the Department of Education. And if there's a meeting I should attend, I may ask someone else to go. I respect public funds, and I will be accountable as chair, and my colleagues will work very hard for this department. So my message to you, dear senators, is it's a new day. Things will change. We need our employees at DOE to be flexible and to accept change and to learn new things. They will benefit by learning new ways of doing things. It will strengthen their skills, their resumes, their ability to progress in the organization. And I suggest that everyone be committed as more than ever to this department and to work closely with our leader, Dr. Pat, and the management team. They're not there to hurt anybody. They're there to improve our school system. I do have one recommendation, if I can make it. You know, we have a law. Students are entitled to an adequate education. Senator Borja, I hate that word adequate. Please change it to excellent. Please change it to excellent so that we are not satisfied with average. That in itself will create an attitude change in the organization, and how the public perceives what we must do. Everything we do should be with excellence. Excellence in the classroom, excellence in all the administrative functions of the department, excellent for the people of Guam. So just changing that one word from adequate to excellent, I think will help us be able to be highly and more motivated to continue the work that's beginning now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, before I open up the panel for questions or comments from my colleagues, what I want to at least comment or say, because I attended most of the board meetings up until, I mean, I haven't gone since Dr. Wampat has been the superintendent, but it was a battlefield to be there sometimes uncomfortable, I think uncomfortable for a lot of people. And, you know, whatever the reasons were then, we don't need to get into, but I think my question to you as the new chair, because I feel like there was no decorum in the way things were handled, I think for the most part. And again, like when going into this or bringing this up has nothing to do with, it's more than just one. You know, for me, when I raise concerns or bring issues to the superintendent or to the board or the chair, it's not because one person came to my ear and said one thing, right? It's a bunch of complaints or concerns that were raised. And then of course I have my wife who is a school counselor and her entire family is part of the school system. So before I ever try to raise anything, there's a lot of discussion as to whether we think like, hey, is this a valid complaint that we need to make public or at least bring up? And so in regards to the structure or the governance of, not necessarily governance, but the board, how can you reassure employees, parents that a lot of the issues, again, that are they're not new, they're gonna feel like there's a process, or what would be the process for them to address their concerns with what a lot of people claim to be the interference of the board with GDOE operations?
And on behalf of the board, and I think the board members know that my approach is a little different from other chairpersons. I work and I will work through the superintendent. As soon as I receive a complaint from anybody, and anyone is welcome, they can contact me, they can email me, a concern or problem, I will sit down with the superintendent and I will expect and request that she look into this matter and give me a response and give the complainer a response as quickly as possible. That's our responsibility, but we must work through the superintendent, because that's where the issue of micromanaging comes. I don't go to schools unless it's a social function or an award ceremony. I don't interfere at the school level or in any office of the Guam Department of Education. I work through the superintendent, and that would be my advice to my colleagues, that our superintendent deal with these issues, but respond to us and ensure that whatever the concern is that is registered with us is responded to by the superintendent.
Thank you. The one thing I want to ask in regards to whether it be the audit from the OPA and even the management audit that maybe you might not be able to talk to because you guys haven't formally adopted it, and I'm sure my colleagues will probably get into some of the details of that audit, but I guess my question to you in regards to those audits are, just big picture, what is your plan to address a lot of the recurring concerns that have come up in multiple audits as the new chair?
Well, let me say this, Mr. Chairman. I know our superintendent will be discussing how the department is dealing with the audit, but
I think just more pertinent to the board and a lot of the
board, you know, for me, I accept criticism. I want criticism to know where the issues are and to be able to resolve them. The audit that was conducted had a lot of infirmities, even in just the nomenclature that they used to identify individuals or board members. But some of the issues they raised are good issues, and some of them were not validated. So I understand there was a meeting yesterday, a committee meeting, to look at the audit again and to develop a coordinated response to it. But one of the issues was, and this does concern me, that this audit was supposedly leaked before the board ever saw it. We never saw it before it was leaked. That's not right. Because generally an audit is written and you're given an opportunity, a draft audit, to respond and to make corrections. And that didn't happen. So I think that contributed to the dissatisfaction of the board. But I'm not dissatisfied if the findings and recommendations are valid and useful, and I will advise our superintendent to consider all of those with her team. We only ask that, we get involved in the process and we see it when we're supposed to see it, not headlines in a newspaper article, and having to respond to it with the inaccuracies that were there. But any audit I read, any input I have an opportunity to give, I share with the board. I'll ask for their input. We'll come up with a coordinated response. But the audit was done. Let's consider the valid recommendations. Let's make clarification on those that may not have been appropriate. And let's clean up the inaccuracies regarding individuals and names and things like that that are in the audit. These are just good editing types of things that should have been caught before it was released. Thank you.
But just, again, back to I guess my question was, this is the second management audit that has come out, and then the OPA audit. I know you just became the chair, but what are some initial plans in regards to addressing a lot of
Well, I think the biggest plan was the selection of the superintendent. That was part of our response to the audit. We had wonderful candidates, and we made a decision based on what the department needs at this time: aggressive action, full commitment, understanding the concerns of the public, the audit findings, and everything else that we deal with on a regular basis. And the freedom to select a management team that she feels will help us respond to these issues. And I think we have a good management team. We have a very pedigreed, experienced leader at the helm of the department. And I believe we are moving forward. As I said, I acknowledge problems from the past. I've only been there a year, but I acknowledge the problems. But now we're moving forward. And I think we should all move forward together. We're not the enemy of the employees at the department. We're supporting them. We want to support them. We're not the enemy of the legislature. We want to work with you. And everything we do with you will be open and transparent. And we ask that you consider the issues that we have to deal with and contribute to solutions. Because I think you have the role as the policymakers to help us do that. So together, I think I'm very optimistic, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we'll go to the panel for some questions. Colleagues, you have 5 minutes. Senator Salas Matanani, do you want to, are you going to?
Can I hold my questions until after I hear from the superintendent? And
That's fine, thank you. Senator Duenas, anything for the board in regards to the board?
Sidus Masi, and thank you for your opening, Senator Guthertz, and now recently elected board chair. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I just want to focus because I think right now I'm in the fresh start mode. The bottom line is we can go over things in the past, but I'm looking forward because we have a new management team, we have a new superintendent, we have new deputy superintendents, and I want to start by saying I was very encouraged with Mr. Franklin Leon Guerrero's first move to question costs associated with additional costs to John F. Kennedy, knowing that we're leasing that school and it should be our purpose, throughout the time as needed. That'll be handled down the line, but I like that first move in terms of fiscal accountability. Senator, you and I have both served together, including in a legislature where our current superintendent was a speaker and you were a senator. And we all know the challenges associated with budgeting. And I want to focus in on this. The chairman has done a good job. He came in as a new chairman, as a freshman senator, and one of the first things that happened was we were confronted with fiscal concerns on the federal level and an internal policy that we had to deal with, because do we go again and appropriate an additional $30 million to handle situations that were needed at the time, that were thought that were needed? But through collaboration, and this is where you can see that I do collaborate, with bringing in BBMR and OFB and sitting down at the same table, we found out internally that Department of Education had the funds to be able to use to get those reimbursements and things going. So we had some misrepresentations along the line that were very concerning to me. And I believe in the other part of this presentation today, we're going to see once again a significant amount of lapsed funds all the time, wherein this, in particular in this legislature, there's constant criticism that we're not funding at adequate levels. And I know that education is absolutely in need in so many different ways. And I know we'll talk about that in depth. But I hope that the board, from your leadership position and the position that the board's going to take, like you're talking about working in concert with the superintendent, is to really be clear about the fiscal policy internally and externally in terms of what the actual needs are, how the money's being spent, and how we move forward to have that true accountability. And I think that I hope we'll all be on the same page with that, because we don't need to be fighting about who's going to get the headline of what appropriation, and also what's going to happen to appropriation. I mean, I may be criticized, but yes, that first $20 million that we gave to the Department of Education was to deal with pay raises that were given using federal money to reimburse, and that got kicked all over the place. And so I'm looking for this board to really hone in on sound fiscal policy, because to me, that emulates out and takes care of everything else once we're being true to ourselves and what number we have to get at and how we have to work together to get in the totality of the government of Guam that is in need of resources as well. I got to say this, Senator, I don't mind changing adequate education to excellence, but in due to my good friend and the late great, as far as I'm concerned, Robert Klitsky, Senator, his approach to outlining that adequate education was exactly why we're going to talk about things here today, were the deficiencies in the department delivering the basic needs of education. And the word adequate came about, and the points came about to say, you should have an adequate temperature in a classroom. You should not have to breathe mold. You should have books. You should have all the requisite things to learn. Excellence is going to come from our great teachers, our faculty, our staff, in concert with working with parents to ensure that they're trying their best to let their children have what they need to learn. That is where the excellence will come from. But I just wanted to make sure that if we roll down that road to do that, we make sure we're adequate so we can be excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Dueñas. Senator Gumatata.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, former Senator Dr. Guthertz, for what you just presented earlier. I just want to point out one thing that jumped out at me was when you said that there must be, quote, a standard of performance that the public expects from the employees of the Guam Department of Education. Thank you for saying that. Now it's incumbent on you as advisory board, as you said, to keep them and hold them to task. When we come down here to talk budget, talk policy, We don't need spin. We don't need the grandiose things that people might not understand. We need just hard facts sometimes. Because today in 2026, I think the people of Guam are expecting from both you and from us to be just very direct and no more sugarcoating. That cereal and toast is out the door. We need to be very firm, and I appreciate you coming here ahead of this discussion to say just that, and I look forward to working with you and the board. And I agree with what Senator Duenas mentioned about maybe the renaming, but I also know that bill too, or that law, there can be some changes, and I think there should be, to make the system work better for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Gumutao. Senator Barnett.
Mr. Chair, Manana Sidus to the people of Guam. Thank you for watching on our YouTube stream and our GTA channels. And congratulations, Madam Chair, on your election as Chairman of the Guam Education Board. Also, congratulations, Madam Superintendent, on your selection as Superintendent. I guess I just want to start with the management audit. As you well know, it was my public law that reinstated management audit after a period of 15 years. And I know that you had kind of talked about some of the errors in the audit, but it's my understanding, just from talking to different board members, that those are, or would you call them typos, for lack of a better term?
Well, I would say they just did not confirm some of the information that they included. And there were some titles that were wrong of people in the department, as well as some alleged facts that were not factual. And we would have corrected those had we been given a draft, which is normally the process in an audit. You see it and you make your comments before it's finalized. But we did not have that opportunity. But regardless of that, I don't resent the audit. I'm not angry about the audit, but there were some infirmities, and we just have to deal with those, I suppose, at this point, and take the information that is helpful to us and address them, and we will do that. We're not going to ignore the audit.
Just in discussing the audit with some stakeholders of the public school system, and I know you had mentioned the word leaked, that the audit was leaked. Would you say some of the constituents I've talked to who are of the mindset that the board is somehow trying to suppress the release of the audit because of the significant findings?
No, I'm not afraid of information personally. The whole world can read it if they want to. But, you know, give us a chance to address some of the concerns, and we will. We have to. But also, please just be informed that there are some inaccuracies there, right, and that will be pointed out.
Appreciate that.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's not so much the typos that concern me, it's the very substantive findings in the audit, including the high priority recommendations, which identify low trust and fractured relationships between the Guam Education Board and the Guam Department of Education leadership and staff.
To me,
and
Senator,
also,
if I can
I
respond
just
to
continue,
that one.
Madam Chair, please?
That's not true.
There's a question
Absolutely
coming.
untrue. I see DOE employees every time we have a meeting, whether a committee meeting or a general monthly meeting, and our relationships are always very cordial. Now, there may be personalities that resent other personalities, you know, it's hard for us to control that. But I don't think we have a fractured relationship. That's really something that I don't think can be justified at all.
I think it's based on interviews that were conducted with employees. And just to further the point, Madam Chair, you know, the good chair here had a hearing up at the T-ZEN headquarters where we heard from employees themselves who kind of confirmed the quote, low trust and fractured relationships between the board and GDOE leadership. But I just kind of want to read from the audit directly in the findings which listed the following specific behaviors which were identified as micromanagement and operational overreach. They include direct interference with the staff. Board members have been found crossing operational boundaries by contacting division heads, payroll, and human resources staff directly. It also includes retaliatory behavior. The audit reported instances where board members contacted staff specifically to criticize those who had spoken out publicly about inappropriate board behavior. The audit further finds that operational decision-making has also been an issue that should have been resolved at the school or central office level. These are routinely escalated to the board for final decision-making rather than being handled by the superintendent. Further, there was a finding that auditors noted that some members lack training and knowledge of the law, which leads them to often breaking the law while trying to manage the district. Undermining accountability, the board is described as self-policing entity, resulting in zero consequences for members who are the subject of valid ethics complaints. It also finds that multiple sources allege that board members kept the 2025 management audit findings from the public in an attempt to amend critical sections regarding their own behavior before its eventual release. And so while you're kind of, and this is my estimation, talking about the typos, I think it's...
No, I wasn't just talking about the typos.
I hope it's not a deflection from these very serious findings that, you know, and we don't need an audit. The employees have been talking about this for years. So I guess my question is, what are you going to do about these very significant findings?
First,
and are you, and Mr. Atta, Board Member Atta, if you can also answer this, are you aware of instances where there has been interference or there has been these types of behaviors that were cited in the audit?
First, Senator, let me say this in response. I have never seen that happen. I've been there a year. I have not seen that happen. Now, you may have some board members that feel strongly about certain issues and may speak to people about those issues. Their approach is not the approach I use. As I said before, I go through the superintendent. I don't go into an agency or a division or a unit and talk to people about their problems or say there's a problem. I will always go through the superintendent, and I will encourage my fellow board members to do the same thing. However, the problem with some of those observations that you've quoted from the audit, they're not documented. It's easy to say those things. They don't identify who says it. They don't explain how it was said. They just quote people. It's like on Facebook when people don't use their name.
Madam Chair, this isn't like Facebook, though. This is an audit, a management audit that was conducted on the department.
It's a management audit without documentation.
So I guess if you could just kind of get back to the center of this, although you say that you have never seen these types of infractions, I guess, for lack of a better term, clearly the auditors have interviewed employees who believe this, who feel that it's an issue, and the auditors put it in the audit.
Senator,
so
not
even if you haven't seen it, Madam Chair, can you tell me what you intend to do about it?
Just because it's in writing doesn't make it true. And I would suggest to you, if I may, you know, if you really feel strongly about these things, talk to the board. Ask us.
I am.
Here we have an opportunity. I'm clarifying what I see. It's not fair to try to attack a group without any documentation, without any...
The audit is the documentation, Madam Chair.
But it's because they say that in the audit doesn't make it true, Senator. But regardless of that, as I said earlier, my personal position is to look at it, take the recommendations that can be helpful to us, and clarify those that may not be adequate or may not be actual. That's the position that I have on it.
Well, I hope you approach it with a little less skepticism because, again, as you had mentioned, the audit contains a lot of really valid points, and I absolutely believe that these are very valid points. We've heard, all of us up here have heard from the employees and the staff about this type of thing occurring, and so I don't think they or I appreciate the dismissal of these very valid findings, and I hope that the board moves on these
How
findings.
have you validated the findings?
They're contained in the audit, Madam Chair, and I think my time's
you're
up.
saying they're valid, but
See,
who
just
has
Mr.
validated
Chair.
them?
Madam Chair, Madam Chair from the board, I can at least, I know again, my wife works for the department. It is, I think for me, aside from the audit, I've like Senator Barnett, and I'm sure a lot of these other senators have heard from not just one staff members. I've done a lot of I've done enough town halls to hear, and it's a common thread amongst the community, especially. If we can just allow Mr. Addis, if he'd like to respond to just kind of your opinion. I know you've been on the board a lot longer than, I know Dr. Guthrie, you were in the past, but Mr. Addis, if you'd like to respond to Senator Barnett's question earlier.
I'll make it short, brief, and right to the point. I read the audit. After going over 108 pages, I quit. I was disgusted. It seems, for me, it's blame everybody. Where is it that we work together rather than attack? They attack the supervisors, they attack the former deputies, the superintendent, the board. Come on.
Do we know how many people were?
Senator, do you know how much was paid for that audit? You do? How much?
It's like over $500,000, right? Oh, $500,000?
400,000 for an audit that, in my opinion, was very biased.
But I get the maybe some of the skepticism about the audit. But how many employees do you think that they've talked to in the department for that audit? And how many auditors do you think? Like 20? I think 10 auditors. I at least talked to 4 people that were in a room. How many employees do we think that the auditors spoke to?
Gee,
how many employees do you think were interviewed for this audit at the department? 10? Would you say 20, 30? What would be a guesstimate? You guys are not sure?
No documentation.
No documentation?
No, I'm saying that we do not know. I do not know.
We saw what was printed out. That's what we got.
That's all we saw.
But I mean, if obviously there were multiple auditors that spoke to, I'm sure 20, 30, maybe even 50 people at the department, if it was enough to influence a common theme across the audit, then it would be safe to say that, yes, there are some things in there that need to be corrected, but would you say that there are a lot of valid concerns in the audit? I guess that's the big question that we need to understand. We can talk technicalities and we can talk about biased opinions, but for the listening community and the community at the Department of Education, would it be safe to say that there are a lot of valid concerns in the audit?
Yes, but Senator, if you are reporting something out in writing, make sure it's accurate. Make sure. I don't know how else can I explain that. When I saw that report, as I said, I don't mean to be redundant.
But yes or no, Mr. Addis?
I quit, and I said, disgusting.
But are there a lot of, would you
Mr.
say
Chair?
that there are valid concerns in that audit? Yes or no?
I'm sorry?
Would you say that there are at least valid concerns in that audit?
And there are some, but a lot of it wasn't.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you.
if I may, I'm sorry, dispense that, sir. But I think it's clear the audit was very critical of the board, and it now seems like the board doesn't want to address the main points in the audit. I think it's very clear, Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Senator Terlahi.
We didn't say that we're not going to consider the audit. We did not say that. The audit was done. We're looking at the things there that we can address that will help us. But you have to understand the circumstances in which it was presented to us. We had no opportunity to respond to it before it was released.
May I
And
just...
I would also like to suggest one thing. You know, when you get people, especially from off island, to come to Guam for a few days and then leave and then write a report, which did not talk to all the stakeholders, this is what happens. The inaccuracies occur. And I wish, I just wish that we would use our resources better on the island for projects like this that already have an institutional understanding of our institutions. I think the results would have been more helpful and more, even better to assist the department. But that's my personal perspective.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Talahi.
Just Masi, Mr. Chair, thank you for your testimony, and Madam Chair, as a new superintendent, and board members. This is a very strange situation we're in here today because the agenda says we're going to talk about the role of the Guam Education Board, transparency, accountability, and public trust. But I hear kind of a denial that those are issues or that there's any problem to fix. I haven't heard of one problem that we're going to fix, kind of just the promises of new leadership now, we're moving forward, but we have many of the same board members still. So the audit was done by a company called Pacific Policy Research Center. It was procured by who? Who procured the audit? The Department of Education, is that what you're saying, Madam Chair? Yeah, that's what I believe. It's the Department of Education who entered into this contract, who set forth the scope, who set forth the deliverables. And it is concerning to me that I'm reading the board's last minutes, and where they pretty much said the audit's trash. They use all kinds of words for it. So they pretty much want us to discount the management audit. Now, there's two audits we're talking about. One's a management audit, and then I think later on today we're going to hear about this financial audit that the OPA on Guam has done. And this other company, sounds like they were off-island company, but still, we hire off-island companies all the time for different types of management audits to get an objective view of things, and one that's not influenced by local politics, hopefully. And I would just say, let's just say there were some governing or management recommendations that they are making, or findings that they're making that we need to improve upon. I agree with the chair. It's not, we haven't just heard it from that audit. We've heard it from the public. We've heard it from, most amazingly to me, was GDOE legal counsel saying that the board has issues with accountability. Same thing that's listed in our agenda: transparency, accountability, and public trust. She claimed that they are willing to act ultra-virus, which means against the law, and not be held accountable, that they are not transparent, and the students had to use a FOIA to get certain information that the board would not release. My understanding is the board, according to its minutes, would not even act on this management audit, would not address particular findings in it. There got to be some that you need to agree can be made better. And I don't think making it better is solved by your promise to not talk to any of the DOE employees. I don't think that's going to solve the whole issue that we have. And I guess I just want to ask you, so what is your recommendation? Is the board still needed at DOE? Is a policy board still helpful to DOE? Is it a hindrance to DOE, an impediment for management? Is it something that the employees feel has their back, is going to help them with between management and the employees? Is that where the board's role is, or Or what do you think? I mean, are you proposing, you don't seem to be proposing a governing board. I thought that was like the debate, someone in a governing board versus not. But we've been down that road for years, and you outlined the history of DOE very well. But we are here right now in the present trying to move forward, but we can't move forward very well. I don't want to wait another 4 years to try new leadership versus making exact policies that we are not going to fail again. One of the things that I really want to know, what is the board's role in something like this, where they found that despite multiple grants receiving liquidation extensions, GDOE was unable to properly utilize $12 million in available federal resources, resulting in lost opportunities to deliver special education services, early intervention supports, and other supplies, equipment, and services to support public education. These programs were fully funded but never realized. That's from the financial audit. What is the board's response to that? Does the board have a role? Is the board going to help GDOE in not losing federal funds? Or is the board an impediment to that? Or is it just neutral? It's just neither here nor there, and we're requiring the superintendents to report to the boards, but we're still ending up with this.
Senator, that brings up the governance issue. We can only recommend, and I've been attending our budget committee meetings. We have our budget committee, and I see the board members working with the division chiefs and the management team, making strong recommendations on financial issues, including federal funding, that we cannot allow the deadlines to elapse. We have to use every federal dollar we receive. This is how maybe you can work this in to do it better, but it's only recommendations. We can't force anyone to do anything in the current governance structure. Now, in my opinion, being objective, having been on the school boards in the past, we've tried different models. We had appointed school board under various governors. I was on an appointed board. Then we had our first elected board, which was challenged by a governor due to quote-unquote organic issues.
Yes, I'm familiar with the history,
Right.
but what is your recommendation going forward?
Well, my recommendation is that this should be a decision of the people of Guam. This community should decide what the best model would be.
all
Now,
right.
for me, I will support any model that will enhance public education.
All right, I'm asking you, as
My
the
opinion-
elected board members of Guam, some
my
appointed
opinion
board
at this
members of
point-
Guam
at
who
this-
have served quite a number of years on the Board of
Yes,
Education.
yes.
Is the board helping?
Yes,
The Department
this would
of
be my
Education.
recommendation. My colleagues may not agree with me. But it seems there's a lot of barriers to having a board, an elected board, under the current model. I would not object if we go back to the appointed board.
How does that help you?
The reason it helps is because the resources of the government could assist the
So
department.
you're saying because it's not appointed by the governor, the resources of
I'm
the
saying
government are
that
not
we
available
do
to the
not
Guam
con-
Department of Education?
We do not control resources that could be helpful to us from the local government without the support of the governor. And that's a model that should be looked at compared to the current model. What works best for our school system?
Well, we could go back to then an appointed by the governor superintendent if that was the logic, because that would
Well,
mean,
that-
it just doesn't make sense to me. We
Well,
are electing
that
you
that was the
to
system
take
before.
politics
and
out of
that
education.
was the system before that worked.
You are a policy board, not a governing board, but you want to, I don't know, kind of pass the buck back to
Under
the
current-
administration.
Under the current system, Senator, our authorities are very limited.
All right, so,
We appoint a superintendent
yes.
and we give advice to the school system.
Are you able to remove superintendents?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you able to remove superintendents?
Yes, if
Yes,
it
you
doesn't
hire and
perform,
you are
yes.
able to fire.
That's all we can
And
do.
that's why when you hire, it's very important that you decide what the goals are going to be, what the outcomes are going to be. And if they're not able to meet that outcome, then that's how you manage education.
Well, we understand that, but even with that, looking at the sometimes the resource issues, some of these things could be resolved with the support of the departments and agencies of the government of Guam, helping DOE.
Well, I totally agree with that. There are some resources, but I think DOE has to also acknowledge that's not what I'm talking about right here, right now.
Well,
We're not talking about where do we
there's-
get the money, where do we get the help to fix the power. I'm asking about the board and its role.
Well, I'm saying to you, the board has limited authority now. And that's one of the difficulties. But we're working well with our new superintendent, and we're trying to make it work.
Do you hope to change how the board addresses finances or change how the board addresses complaints about management or how it addresses complaints about the board itself? Are you going to take those up? Because in the last meeting, they said very clearly, unanimously, 8-0, to table this management and curriculum audit report because of the errors of fact, put it aside, kind of like not address it. And I don't know how those people in the department are, are going to feel that you're being responsive like that.
The department is actually looking at the audit. As a matter of fact, they had a meeting yesterday to look at the audit and to determine how they wish to respond. And I think we should allow the superintendent maybe to share what the meeting findings were. I was not at that meeting, so I had a class.
All right.
Last question,
Sorry about
Senator
that.
Chalabi,
Oh,
go
yeah,
ahead.
my last question then is, would you commit then, as the new chair and with the board members, they're not even all here, would they commit to going through this audit for the recommendations made regarding the board or the findings regarding the board? You say they're bad, well, address them. Either say to the whole Department of Education that the auditors were wrong, that's false, or that this is how we're going to fix that. Because
that's our intent,
I
Senator.
think just saying that the auditors were all wrong seems so
We didn't say, I did not say that.
dismissive, not really helpful for
Senator,
us
I didn't
to go
say
forward.
that. I said some of the things there are useful, and we should follow them.
I think you're the one quoted here, says Mrs. Oh, sorry, it says Mrs. Gutierrez, not you. Yeah, called it trash. Yeah.
I never said that.
All right. Do you agree that there should be management audits of GDOE?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Senator
Thank you,
Chalabi.
Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we'll go ahead and move now to Mr. Audit. Did you want to say something before we move to GDO, the department?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Senator Borja, Speaker Terlahi, Senator Sabrina Salas Matanani, good morning, and Senator Christopher Duenas. I'm going to make my talk very short, 3 points, and get out of here so we can give others a chance to talk. My name is Peter Alexis Ada. I have been in the appointed, elected, even at the district-wide when we were removed, not by the governor. It was one particular individual that had us removed. But I'm going to cover three areas and real quickly. Number one, I am for staggered term. I am. However, 4 years is too long. Now, you might probably be saying, how can you talk like that when you've been there 50 years? Don't make sense. But when you have a whole bunch of group and they're all there for 4 years, sometimes it's workable, sometimes it's not. I want to hit an area very, very close to me, special ed. I recently saw, I don't know whether it was a legislation about a specialist. Here's my thought, senators. Rather than sending 5, 6, 7 people to the states, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the same people are sent to those training. I don't want to be just critical because I'm a believer. If you are critical, boy, you better have a solution. So I have a proposal. Why don't we, after that training is called for the mainland, for all the states, invite that specialist to come to Guam at their time of availability. We will pay for their airfare. We will pay for, in accordance with federal regulation, we will pay for their hotel and their stay. That way, everybody benefits. In fact, we can even invite the people from the surrounding islands to come join so they can hear it. Many times people in the States don't even know where Guam is, and you know that. But if they come and see for themselves what struggles we go through, they just might understand. I'm sorry, Senator, for a moment. The second point, excuse me, I don't know whether this was already covered in a previous public hearing, but if it is, I beg your indulgence. At the same time, I'm going to use this opportunity to say it. There's a law that came out recently and passed into law that a retiree from the Guam Department of Education may now their lifetime certification. The last school year, I remembered hearing about 223 vacancies. Now, this is overall, okay? Not only classroom administrators and clerical. So, here is my suggestion. Senators, those people that retired recently, they love their job. But it was time for them, let's get out of here. But sometimes many of them for financial needs or other, because they're sending children to college, sometimes they will take it, but senators, at the price you're offering them at step 4, step 1, I've said it in this very hole. It's a slap on the face, it's a slap on the profession. They're not going to take it. So I have a proposal. Think about it. Maybe the board can pass a resolution to that effect and send it to you people so you can look at it and see what you can do. Increase the retirement, those teachers who are applying to return back upon retirement to a teacher 5. That will be $48,000. Let me remind you, senators, and if you may not know, in fact, it was somebody in the administration here that told me there was an individual teacher who had to go on extended leave for whatever reason, for about 8 weeks to 4 months, something like that. So a teacher had to pick up during their prep time that class to cover. That teacher is being paid $35 an hour on top of their regular base pay. If we take these teachers that are, another issue real quickly, why are we isolating it only to the classroom? There are some other professions within the department that are good, qualified, certified, capable teachers to fill that position. But the $48,000 I'm offering you is only, repeat, only if they have been accepted to come into the classroom and teach for that period, for that school year. Senators, you would have less school aides having to fill in a classroom instruction. About 2 years ago, I was shocked to hear that a school aide was teaching a whole class, and it was a school aide and not even a student. Senators, I would rather take a qualified teacher. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, I have nothing against school aides, but they have their job too that they have to do. So as I said, I'll make it short, straight to the point. You hear what I have to say, and I'm out of here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Audit. Dr. Wanban, if you want to go ahead and do your presentation or your opening. Thank you.
Buenas and half a day. Senator Borja, Senator Mantanani, Senator Daniels, Senator Chulai, and Senator Barnett. I am the acting superintendent only because the AG hasn't signed my contract. So I will remain as acting until such time. I am joined today, this morning, by the following members of the Guam Department of Education leadership team, and I would like to introduce them to you. Deputy Superintendent of Finance and Administrative Services, Mr. Franklin Leon Guerrero. Deputy Superintendent of Assessment and Accountability, Dr. Julie Ujoa Heath. Deputy Superintendent of Educational Support and Community Learning, Ms. Jackie Kitagwa, and Deputy Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Risa Liwak. My team and I started on January 5th of this year, and today makes our 30th day on the job. This report provides the Guam Legislature with an update on the Guam Department of Education's operational status, fiscal stewardship, infrastructure management, and instructional priorities. This report will also highlight actions taken to stabilize operations, strengthen accountability, and improve services to our students and schools. The DOE senior management team is focused on ensuring continuity of leadership and stabilizing departmental operations. The team conducted listening tours and visited 18 of 39 schools to date, with a formal schedule established to complete visits to all remaining schools. These visits informed decision-making by identifying school-level needs, operational challenges, and best practices. Meetings were held with all divisions to assess current operations, clarify priorities, and identify areas for improvement. Procurement processes were reviewed and refined efficiency and timelines. These actions contributed to improved coordination across divisions and reinforce operational stability. Leadership initiatives emphasize collaboration, accountability, and shared responsibility through the guiding principle of Inatfa Maulik, promoting respectful partnerships and collective problem-solving across the department. The Division of Finance and Administrative Services prioritized fiscal discipline, audit readiness, and transparent financial management. Some of the actions taken by DFAS, Franklin Leon Guerrero, conducted division-wide and all-hands meetings to communicate leadership expectations, performance standards, and timeliness for financial responsibilities, implemented clear accounts payable procedures requiring payables to be processed within 5 working days of receipt, or proactively communicate if delays should occur. Collaborated with the Office of the Public Auditor and Ernst & Young in preparation for the fiscal 26 DOE annual audit, including the completion of required financial reports, such as the trial balance, CFRES, and CFRET, and completed 22 of the 28 Ernst & Young audit information requests ahead of schedule. DFAS worked closely with myself and the management team to develop and finalize the fiscal 27-year budget for submission to the Guam Education Board and subsequently for us to submit to the legislature for your review. To maximize federal resources, DFAS conducted work sessions with federal grant managers to accelerate grant drawdowns prior to lapsing. Additionally, DFAS mandated the development of a reconciliation report comparing Tyler Muni's financial data with U.S. Department of Education G5 reporting to reduce discrepancies, minimize lapse funds, and improve reporting accuracy. Human Resources continues, of course, a targeted recruitment effort to address teacher vacancies and school aid shortages. These efforts remain ongoing to ensure adequate staffing levels that support instructional delivery and student services. Some of the things that will be done is initiating a potential recruitment of education majors at the University of Guam before they graduate. A job fair is being planned for the summer. We would advertise in various mediums other than just our website to the community to recruit professionals in the private sector, primarily for their content and their skills that we can easily transfer into the classrooms, and work closely with the certification office to revisit their requirements for certification. Deputy Superintendent Dr. Julie Yajoa Heath strengthened facilities oversight through data-driven and automated systems designed to improve transparency and accountability. Major accomplishments thus far has been the development and implementation of a facilities and maintenance dashboard providing real-time data on work orders, operational trends, and security incidents. She has also automated the facilities and maintenance daily worksheet to track employee tasks and time allocation, which went into effect this January 14th. She developed and implemented a comprehensive tracking system for managing elevator repairs by facilities and maintenance and elevator companies. And lastly, established a task tracking system for the Assessment and Accountability Division to improve coordination and deadline management. ADA compliance work-throughs were conducted throughout the DOE facilities during the week of January the 26th. Identified deficiencies were documented using a standardized compliance checklist with corrective actions targeted for completion by the end of February of this year. A stakeholder needs assessment was also initiated to support the 2026 to 2029 consolidated grant application, ensuring alignment between funding requests and documented school and program needs. Deputy Superintendent Jackie Kittuga engaged division leads in structured discussions to clarify policies, procedures, and program expectations with an emphasis on whole child development and coordinated school-to-home support systems. Board Policy 705 is under review, primarily based on the last board meeting where parents and students were concerned about this particular policy. So what we're doing is we're soliciting the stakeholders' engagement in the development of a plan of action for final approval by the Guam Education Board and the superintendent. School administrators were engaged through scheduled meetings to address key priorities to include the protection of instructional time, instructional best practices, school safety and wellness, and vandalism and facility security. Feedback from the 18 schools visited provided valuable insight into shared challenges, successful strategies, and opportunities for system-wide improvement. Deputy Superintendent Dr. Rizalina Liwag visited approximately 50 classrooms to observe instructional practices and engage directly with teachers and administrators. These visits provided district-level support strategies and reinforced the priority of safeguarding instructional time by limiting teacher pullouts during instructional days. Plans are in place to provide targeted training for school aides supporting students with individualized education programs known as IEPs. To address staff shortages, the superintendent have approved multiple requests to fill for special education positions. Student performance data, including reading and math assessments, continue to be analyzed and used to guide instructional planning and targeted interventions. The management audit, I know you've dwelled on that for some time, will be reviewed to identify areas specifically in our case aligned with a strategic plan for further review and action. The board is committed to fully support the management team. This January 2026 reporting period reflects measurable progress towards stabilizing operations, strengthening fiscal accountability, improving facilities oversight, and reinforcing instructional priorities. The Department of Education management team remains committed to transparency, responsible stewardship of public funds, and continuous improvement in service to Guam students, families, and communities. With that, Senator Sedus Masi and my management team have been all sworn in. I would like to ask them to come to the table to address any of your questions. Sedus Masi.
Thank you, Dr. Wonpat. Any colleagues have any questions before we go to the OPA directed towards the superintendent or her team? Senator Matsunani, do you have any, or do you want to wait for the audit? Madam Chair, if you can still join us, I'm sure we'll have some questions in regards to some of the audit findings. Any questions? Senator Matsunani, any questions?
Well, first, can I just have everybody introduce themselves who I'm talking to?
So I'll go ahead and introduce them now so you can see a face with a name. So to my left is Dr. Julie Ojoa Heath, and she is the Deputy for Assessment and Accountability. And she actually came from GCC also, and she was in charge of the facilities at the community college. To my right is Dr. Risa Liwag, and she comes to us. She's the Curriculum and Instruction Deputy also, and she comes with us with about over 30 some years also in the school system, and gone through the ranks from teacher, principal, senior management, and even as a deputy commissioner. To her right is Franklin Leon Guerrero, who is our DFAS, our finance guy, and he comes with us as well from the private public sector as well. He was the former comptroller at the Guam Port Authority, was with the Pentagon, has extensive background in HR, finance, and so forth. And to his right is Jackie Kidigwa, who is the Deputy Superintendent for Education Support and Community Learning, and she comes with to us with 44 years of educational experiences also from the ranks, from the classroom all the way up to senior management. So this is my entire team.
Thank you, Dr. Wampa. Senator Salas-Manzanoni.
Yeah. Thank you for accepting the position, and congratulations, I think. So just to talk about the audit and coming on board to GDOE, you mentioned that your team conducted listening tours and visited 18 of the 39 schools today. Just real quickly, which schools? What are the schools?
Good morning, Hafaday. Great to be here. And let me see if I can recall correctly all of them, okay? I had it in my notes, but starting with Maleso Elementary, Inalahan Elementary, Emuluhan, Southern High School, Ocean View Middle School, Marshall Sablan, Ordo Chalampago Elementary, Tamuning Elementary, Antalan Middle School, Price Elementary, Benavente Middle School. You can see this is 39 schools, right? But just running all the schools that I can remember that we did along with Dr. Lee Wack got us going. And there could be other schools that I may have missed. Yeah, those were mentioned. I'll try to put that all together, but we also attended some of their events at the school level, like a parent literacy events, JROTC events, and I think that's at Okudo High School. So quite a number, we still have a lot.
What I also like to add, and how, and the reason why you were hearing from both of these two deputies actually work very closely when it comes to instruction, working with teachers and administrators. So both of them have actually gone into the schools together. The other great team that we have is Dr. Yojoa Heath, also, who works very closely with Franklin, because when it comes to facilities, she needs to work with him, with the finance guy, to make sure that we have the finances available to make the repairs. Franklin also has an extensive background as well in facilities, and that's the reason why these two can really dovetail each other in terms of the work that they're doing.
Okay. So you've conducted the tours of these 18 schools. You've seen the independent audit released in December. You've seen the audit from the OPA released in January. You've been on the job for the past 30 days. Just what is your, your initial reaction to the audit, and really just what are you going to do differently? Because we've been hearing a lot of excuses in the past, and I mean, Speaker Wonpat, you were the education liaison for Adelup. Dr. Guthertz, you've been involved with education for so many years. I remember when I first got to Guam more than 20 years ago, you were with the Education Board. So I think the people of Guam, our students, our parents, they're just tired of hearing the same old thing, same old excuses. So what are you going to do differently? And I'd like to hear it from everybody at the table. Thank you.
So, Senator, can you clarify, because there are two audits? We have the management audit, and
I'm
then
just
we
saying
have
that
the,
you have, yes, you have the management
And
audit,
the-
you have the independent audit. You guys did tours of 18 schools. What is going to be done differently so that we're not back here in a month or two just hearing the same old thing, because people are tired of hearing the same excuses.
So if I may, I think maybe the management audit, the management team can address, but for the fiscal or financial audit, I did bring our chief auditor, Mr. Franklin Cooper Nurse, who can speak to that as well if you would like for him to come forward.
We can hear from him, but I guess just from all of your management team, just your initial reaction and your initial plan on how are you going to do things differently, manage your responsibilities differently.
For me, I manage differently by looking at the data. I know where I'm at, and I know where I'm going, and what I need to proceed. And my comment on the management audit, as I've communicated with the team, there are some good points there. Let's take it and align it with our strategic plan and make sure that we address them accordingly. I truly believe in accountability. I account for every of my staff's work, may it be qualitatively or quantitatively. They're being evaluated in every aspect. That is how I function, and that's how I operate with my responsibilities. Thank you.
Hafide, good morning. Senator Borja, Senator Montanani, Senator Duenas, Senator Lahi, Senator Burnett. You know, we can speak for the past 30 days. I can tell you that it's big. You know, I'm in charge of finance. It's big. What I needed to do was understand the processes, understand the key people who are involved, and that's what I've been doing. There are some challenges, but there's good people working. I think that guidance, leadership, accountability are all important words. We have met with our people in the spirit of an often Malik, but couched with the fact that you're accountable for the people's money. Everything that we're doing is for the kids, you know? So let's do it as efficiently and as effectively as possible. What we do impacts different areas of the community. We looked at the procurement processes. It can be tightened up. We looked at the accounts payable, accounts receivable. We can tighten things up. We have tightened things up. I can tell you now, in the past 30 days, that we've gone from accounts payable 30, 60, 90 days. If we compare it from the end of December to the end of January, you will see a reduction in the local payables of 89% reduction. We paid the vendors. Now, that's attention to detail, that's focus, that's getting after the documentation, that's telling my people that, what are you waiting for? Oh, you don't have the document? Get the document. Oh, they're not responding to your email? Call them. They're not responding to your call? Get in your car and drive there. Ever since is not working for this management team. There's a new philosophy in town. We're moving forward. The results are starting to show. From the federal funds perspective on accounts payable in the last 30 days, we've reduced the payouts by 69%. I told my procurement people, my accounts payable people, I said, when we get a justified, verified, validated invoice from a vendor, be it on island or off island, you have 3 to 5 days to pay it. I don't want to see anything in the 30, 60, 90-day column. We're causing unintentionally, I hope, hardships to some of these companies. They're stringing along their payrolls, they're holding on by their fingernails. So things are changing. They are changing. We're holding people accountable. Unfortunately, there has been some disciplinary action taken that was needed because of the documentation was not flowing, and it was extreme. Somebody wants to hold on and not do their, when you're talking about money and procurement process, you have to do it right. And the paperwork has to flow that justifies it. And if somebody is standing holding paperwork for an unreasonable amount of time, then they need to be called to task. Why? Well, people are being called to task. We are moving stuff. The log jams are freeing up. It's working. We just need more time. I can tell you that there are good people. Some of them have been around and they got a routine. They got since ever since, but that's not our process. Since ever since is now. So I think that message has gone out. I think that our visiting the schools, going down to Southern, seeing for our own self, the leaks in the roofs and things like that, we are already starting an effort to see how we can financially and effectively start working on the roofs. It's too easy to say, replace the roof, it's 25, 30 years old, it's metal. Replace it, that's an expensive proposition. New technologies have come out. We're looking at some of this cloth that you can put an adhesive down, put the cloth and put adhesive again, and it's watertight, okay? The tin roof itself is still structurally there. They have some leaks, but this new technology, we might be able to save a lot of money. So it's not, we went and we saw it, and now we're looking at potential corrective actions. It takes a little time, but we are seeing and we're taking action. From the finance perspective, I can tell you that we've started a master tracker. There was no master tracker before. So part of it, the organization is so large, the communications is challenged. So now the superintendent has authorized the creation of a master tracker. Everything's going to be in it. So now it will have visibility. It will be on the radar screen. That's what it takes. If somebody's watching it, less things will be missed. I'm mandating the creation of a new report between our system, it was mentioned. The federal system, G5, has a certain reporting on how much drawdowns we have. Our internal system, Tyler Munis, has its reporting. It just so happens that this is not always the case. Tyler Munis has a greater level of detail, our local system, than the G5 is reporting to us. So we can take any discrepancies now and break it down even further. So I can tell you the subset chart of accounts that is not meeting the plan, and we can focus on that. So we're putting these new efforts in place, this new cross-balancing, cross-checking that wasn't quite there, or was there kind of, and we're refining it and we're enhancing it. So I think you will see good results. Thank you.
You asked about the plan of action that we have, that we will be in place or develop in the future. So for the curriculum and instructions, we closely look at the reading and math data proficiency of students and above. And showing that data, we do have a screener called Ames Web Assessments that tells us, or that are given to the students during the pre, mid, and post. That is during the fall, winter, and spring. And we closely monitor that. So in fact, we just completed our mid assessment testing, and basically it shows here how much % of our students are proficient and above in reading and math. So I can say those percentage right now if you would like to hear. For kindergarten, during the fall, 38% of our students in reading has reading proficiency rate, and during the winter, 50% of our students are proficient in reading. For math, during the fall, 31% of our students are proficient in math, and in the winter, 50% of our students are proficient in math. The second grade, our first grade, from 60 to 62 for reading, and for math, from 34 to 49% are proficient and above. For second grade, from 47 to 50% in reading, and for math, 23 to 29. Third grade, we have 49% to 51. For math, we have 24 to 31. Fourth grade, we have 44 to 41. Kind of went down, so we really need to take a look at what's happening there. And then for math, 32 to 33. Fifth grade, we have 41 to 45. Math, we have 30 to 35. For sixth grade, from 40 to 42. And for math, we have from 27, the same 27% of our students are proficiency and above. For seventh grade, from 46 to 50, and for math, 26 to 35. And eighth grade, from 40 to 44, and for math, 22 to 24. As you see, we're really closely watching the data, and we still have our last assessment this coming May, that would conclude our this year's assessment. But what we plan to do is to make sure that we engage our teachers, administrators for data dialogue, and set a proficiency rate, which is an ideal proficiency rate of 80% of our students should be proficient in math and reading in order for them to become college and career ready. So we emphasize the college and career ready, in which our division will work with our school administrators and classroom teachers and other interventionists to create a framework for college and career ready in the future. We will continue to guard instructional time. So through our visits, we found out that there are some teachers that are being pulled out during this instructional time, and we want to minimize that. So I am working closely with my program coordinators to make sure that we provide training, professional development during professional development days and during the summer. We work collaboratively with school administrators to address their instructional needs. We will provide appropriate training for our school aides to make sure that they are able to provide efficient interventions for our students. We will ensure that we, again, deliver our goal to prepare our students for college and career life ready. We will build a school accountability report card composed of different indicators to see of whether the students the schools are highly effective schools or in needs of improvement. We will build an early warning system so that we would be able to identify students who needs intervention in attendance, discipline, grades, and assessments, and other things that factor in for them to be successful in life. We will also provide teachers with the technology that they need in the classrooms to deliver effective and research-based instructions. So those are some of the things that are listed in here. We need time to make sure that we deliver those actions, and we thank you for your patience with us.
What keeps us up at night is really all about those that the other deputies have shared. And we continue to dialogue and collaborate together with our schools. It really brings the relationship of our leaders at the school level all the way to central, as well as our community partners. I've begun having meetings with community partnerships to see how we can bring greater support and services to our students, to our schools. So if you look at the section where we noted during the visits, a couple of things that we immediately captured consistently, and that is the concern with our students. How are they doing? How are they behaving? And what about their attendance? All of these are intertwined when we talk about student success. And the root of how we do things together starts with our own academic or disposition, right? What is my academic disposition? And it starts with our values. What do we value as we work together with our schools? And how do we operationalize everything that we do? So bringing clarity to policies, to practices, to programs, how they all connect to student results or student outcomes really matter. So we can say that we do work very closely on a regular basis to address these concerns. At the same time, we're looking at how do we prioritize and focus in what matters most. So I just really thought that that is very critical for us as we do encounter those challenges that were mentioned in the audit report and other conversations we have held with our stakeholders. The other piece that I'd like to bring is, of course, the systems that we have in place. How do we improve these systems so that we can do a better way of being more efficient in getting the supports that our schools need, and making sure that as we do work these systems that we are transparent, that we also engage them in what solutions, better solutions, or even best solutions that we can address and that we can use. So decisions and actions are really a result of our beliefs, our values, what matters most. And I do feel, I do see, I do hear the frustration of when will this ever end? It's a repetitive excuse, maybe, I don't know, right? I'm listening, but at the same time, my brain is working, trying to figure out how do we do this. And we're really fortunate because we come together as a team at the district level to also give our team, our division heads, the opportunity to tell us what are their own challenges and how we can do this collectively. So thank you for giving us the honor to share some of our own thoughts and possibly coming up with plan of action that will get us to see results. And I, for one, I like to say, I listen, I think together with others, and it's all about forward thinking, coming together with a solution that will support ultimately our children here in Guam. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper-Nurse.
Half a day, good morning, Senators. So from an audit perspective, and I know you phrased the question, understanding the audit issues in front of us and how would the management team do things differently. I have a different lens. So, and I did sit on the management team at one point. So in an advisory standpoint, and I think I can speak to some critical factors that do need to take place. Number one, first and foremost, is the stabilization of management. And I know OPA is set to present, and in the audit findings, they brought forth the critical need and the problem GDOE's had in the past with the revolving door of leadership. So right now, we're in a transition stage. Our new leadership team has been in, as they mentioned, for 30 days. Oftentimes, philosophies change, management styles change, priorities change, and the directives change within the department. So first and foremost, we need to stabilize our management because our systems and our staffing is behind that and it's built. Leadership goes a long way with setting priorities and moving the department forward. Two, when we look at the audits, whether it be the financial audit, a performance audit, or even this management audit, I encourage the management team and advise them to always understand the merits of the findings. Look at the root causes. One thing that's critical is to avoid repeat audit findings. If auditors are bringing this to the attention, it's incumbent upon us as leaders to make sure that we address it, we assign resources to it, and we have a corrective action plan in place so that we don't get caught in repeat audit findings. We changed the norm, as you said. We changed the continuity of we're in the same position, it's different team, but same problems. We want to get past that, understand the root causes that GDOE faces, and address them. The other thing that is going to be critical moving forward, we are a big agency, we're a decentralized agency, and we have had numerous changes amongst top management, but also middle management. So we're going to have to improve staffing capacity in critical areas. Critical areas such as financial management, budgeting, grant management. Even in our accounting, we need to improve our capacity and our ability to respond accurately with financial reports. This process will lend itself to better grant management, better financial management, and move things through quickly in the procurement system. Other things that we have to look at now with the new team is efficiency gains. Very bureaucratic, large agency often stagnates in not only management and decision-making, but moving things through the system, taking actionable items and making that go from this is a position, this is a policy, this is an SOP, this is an actionable item, and then actually getting that fully implemented so that it makes the prescribed difference that it's intended to do. And then lastly, we have to have a greater focus. And I think the Senator Borja, there was a bill in the Budget Act that there's transparency and then there's focus in financial management. And one thing that we have to do is make sure not only do we prioritize the limited funds and the funds that we do have, but we make sure that there's transparency with that fund so that it's going to the critical needs of the department. Prioritization should always be school first, should always be students first. And with the funds that we're getting, one of the advantages in that bill, it is a lot of financial reporting, some of it may be redundant, but it puts a measurement and a metric to how much funds we're actually getting, where we are in the quarter and expending that, what is our program initiatives, and whether or not those funds are going dedicated and being expended properly of what was aligned to the approved spend plan per the appropriation. So it's going to keep this team and it's going to keep us focused on making sure we can execute the funds that are appropriated in the manner that it's intended to do. It also keeps us honest with making sure that those funds, and we'll hear shortly from the OPA, are executed timely so that there isn't a loss of federal funds or there isn't a lapse of local funds. So ultimately, several critical factors. Leadership is the biggest thing. Making sure that we are taking corrective action, assigning the necessary people with the right backgrounds, qualifications, resources, and then looking at any merit of these audit findings so that we can address them and not end up in the same situations. Only then can we start to see the improvements. It's the leadership, prioritization, assigning resource, and then the commitment from the team to stand behind some of the actions that it's going to take. Some of the decision-making may be challenging, but again, we need the leadership to take that charge, lead the teams, get the actionable items executed, and then take it through the year and see it through. Thank you.
I did have one question since you kind of brought it up regarding lapse funds, because it's something that I've been seeing in the agencies that I have oversight over with regards to lapses and carryover funds that apparently are no longer there. which I question. But has GDOE received any notices from BBMR or DOA about lapse funds that were approved in the current fiscal year budget that you are not going to see or you won't be receiving? And if so, how much?
So fortunately for GDOE, we're established as a semi-autonomous agency. The language in the law, our lapses stay within GDOE. So generally in other agencies, after lapse funds in the line agencies are identified, they revert back to the general fund. In GDOE, we have a provision in statute that says lapses carry over into the following year. So what we have is lapses from, and we just finished the audit of 24 carrying into 25, closing 25, if there's a surplus there, carries into 26. So those lapses, to answer your question, don't revert. We do have the lapses identified in audit and the cash available in bank.
Okay, thank you. And I look forward to working with you, Speaker Wampat, and your management team as a member of the Committee on Education. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Salas-Mazzanoni. Senator Dueñas.
Just want to see, Mr. Chairman, and just to be clear, we're addressing this presentation and pretty much everything on the list? Okay. So I wanted to start, because top of the list, and it's been discussed a little bit earlier, but maybe some more detail. Like welcome aboard, Speaker Wampat. The first item here really is leadership transition and department stability. So can you just give us your overview, your 30-day overview, other than what you wrote in here on management stability? Do you feel now with your team and the transition that you're on solid ground?
Thank you very much. I know that's usually a big question, and the board had asked us basically the same thing to kind of set a plan. And rather than doing the 100 days of what it is we wanted to do, we decided that what we were going to do is that we were going to, everyone here, we're going to go out to their specific divisions, meet with their people. But prior to that, we did requests for a lot of information from the previous management team, so we would have a better idea of where DOE is at. Based on that, we made a decision that we are not going to focus basically and lay blame on anything from the past, but rather to take where we're at and to start to fix and repair and replace if we have to. But more importantly, and I know that was something that was brought up about the management audit, about how some of the employees may be feeling about either the board or maybe even management, that it was critical for all of my deputies to go out to meet with their division heads and their employees and assure them basically that we're here to move the department forward. We are focused on the children and the schools. And we are telling everyone that, because at Central we seem so far apart from the classrooms, so we're asking everyone that whatever it is you're doing, you must show that you are impacting that child in the classroom. So we're not thinking that, you know, whatever jobs they're doing that's far removed from the classroom, that they're not impacting, because they are impacting the children. We've assured them that if we're coming in to work with them, we're going to collaborate with them. But if they feel somehow that they are not, either don't have the capacity or the training or the know-how, is that then we will train. And, you know, the employees will give them what they need to be able to perform their work. And then we'll take it from there. Now, of course, there may be those who may feel that it's just not a good fit. Then we will work with the employees. But we wanted to assure them we're not there to penalize anyone. We're not there to fire anyone. We're there to take where we're at in the department and move forward. And it's been working, I believe, very well. The deputies, for the first time, at least we were told, like DFAS, Franklin brought in every division, and meaning their employees, and they were very happy because they said that has never been done before. We're addressing individual concerns. The most important thing, I think, for us when we are moving forward with our mission is to stay focused on the children. It's actually putting our children first.
Sounds pretty stable to me. So going next to financial management and fiscal accountability, of course, I've got a special interest in that. So the Frank and Franklin grouping, I just want to go to Franklin first. I'm very happy to hear that you're already on it for the fiscal year 26 going forward. And I know that there's been a closeout, I understand, and maybe you can speak to that a little bit. And we're going to get I think the public auditor, thank you for being here today. It's vested interest, and thank you for showing up to listen. Going forward, you've stabilized that issue, and we should expect now on-time trial balances and everything else to be able to audit the finances. Can you address that, Franklin?
Yes, sir, Senator Duenas. As you know, I can't speak for before January 1st, but I will tell you that one of the things I mentioned to the entire financial affairs employees when I brought them together, and that had not been done in the past, was that we have a mission to do. And I'm a fan. My federal government job, I was in a performance-based management process. And so I'm very comfortable with the acceptable performance levels, metrics. I'm very comfortable with that. And I told my people that I will be incorporating that into their performance assessments, that they will be held accountable, that there are going to be metrics put in place. I already mentioned earlier, the 3 to 5 days you get contractor invoices paid when it's all justified and complete and all that. That's a metric. That will go into their performance assessments. So trial balances, the public auditor is behind me, gave me a gift within the first week I was here. It was a Zoom call and says, I know you're here the first week, but you're 2 months late in your trial balance. So, he wanted to get my attention. He said that later. I wanted to get your attention and instill a sense of urgency. Well, that happened. We had a meeting, status meeting the other day, and I told him that we got the trial balances in, we got the CEFRAs in, we got the CEFRAS in, and I think it was ahead of what he was expecting it would be. Well, that's going to be the norm now. There's no reason we couldn't have done this in the past. It's a focus thing. It's a guidance. There are good people, but sometimes they get sidetracked or they think something's more important and they don't see the bigger picture. Well, the guidance and the leadership is here. They're seeing it now, and I think that it will show as we move forward in this year, good results. Franklin?
So Frank Kupiner, I think that now we're on the road to truly, as you mentioned earlier, and it sounds like the two of you now should have no problem at least presenting in the budget. I know you're on the audit side, but as it sounds to me like a performance-based budget in essence.
So yeah, there's two things, and the budget is, LG is working and is committed to submitting that and being on top of that as well. But as it pertains to the financial audit, it's refreshing to hear his dedication and focus on prioritizing that, because I couldn't stress that enough, on starting behind, being already behind, as the OPA called us out on, and making sure that we do not fall further behind, because there's a lot at stake with the timeliness or the untimeliness of issuing our financials. And as Franklin said it, and I would confirm as well, there's no reason for these audits to fall behind. We weren't in this position years ago. It's the same people using the same system, reconciling the same grants. Some volume has changed, but the complexity remains the same. We should have the capacity, we do have the systems, we need the leadership, we need the dedication, and we need the prioritization to make sure that this is something that day in, day out, they're working to complete so that it doesn't lack. But correct, yes, there's eyes on it, and one of the good things in the structure of an external financial audit is the oversight from our OPA. He is, and if you know the public auditor, you know him to be on task And he keeps us on task. If he has to call weekly meetings like he did in the past, weekly meetings is something he does. So there's a partnership. Not only does our internal audit watch it, he has oversight and he calls us and he makes sure that we do not fall behind the 8 ball. If it does, it rises to the level of superintendent's attention, board attention, and it goes to make sure that it is going to be completed timely.
If I may,
Please.
The OPA did say that we really should consider hiring certain individuals, qualified individuals, and I've already authorized the HR to look at the list of applicants for a comptroller. So definitely, and to start setting up interviews for that position. And the second also for a qualified accountant. So both of those are moving forward.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent, because my next question was going to be, I hope you're not on board. I understood the reasoning and the discussion, but I don't want to see accounting go back to DOA. I think you're capable. I think you have good people in place now, and you can prove that you need to manage your own finances, and you're going to be the fastest at getting those resources out to your people, as been stated by the current finance chair. I think really facilities and maintenance and infrastructure needs, I don't see that team member here. I know, oh, I'm sorry, my bad. Okay, I missed that part. Please, give me an update on that.
Okay, for the facilities side, what I've done is look at the operation, and I've automated the guys, our staff's daily task. And I know they were resistant because of the fact that they are being tracked, so they time in electronically, and when they complete their task, when they start and when they complete and what they do. And so I review all the work orders, and I created the dashboard. And those dashboards provided me with information as which school needs major attention, and also what, for instance, plumbing or carpentry, what areas that we are in desperate need of paying attention to. The break-ins as well, the data and how we respond accordingly. So it allows me to see the accountability, productivity, and how to be efficient in the areas of facilities. There are a lot of work that needs to be done. I just reviewed the physical master plan, and looking at the deferred maintenance, it is massive, and that was back in 2022. So here we are in 2026, that millions that was identified, I believe is about 250 million, probably is going to be much more to address those deferred maintenances. Is there
No, that's great. And I think you probably know where I'm going next. I know we're all in this Get Simon Sanchez underway, and I'm 1000% behind that. But can you also work with finance and the rest of the group? You know that's going to require some sort of financing
that
scheme.
Is why,
and so, yeah,
Superintendent,
I look forward to you
yes.
compiling all of that so that we can look at a systems-wide. Plus, I'm sure you're looking at also your properties that are now,
yes.
Been mothballed, right? And opportunities there.
Yes. So I do work very closely with DFAS, and everything that I do has money attached to it. So it is vital that I communicate those things with him. Thank you.
Senator, if I might add something. Talked to a principal at the school, and they said to me that before, when they called up that they had a work order, they had something that needed to be done, they felt it was falling on deaf ears, or they never really saw any reaction. Or if they did see a DOE maintenance person come, they found an empty classroom so they could kind of kick back a little and then maybe do some assessment. It was kind of lackadaisical. But that same principal said, having now the new management team in, so the new Dr. Ujoha Heath in, requiring them to be accountable for their time, she said when she put in a work order recently, multiple vehicles drove up with DOE maintenance decals on them, and they got right to the task at hand. And then they hunted the principal down and said, you need to come inspect and sign because my boss is keeping track of my time. So that principal was so happy with the new process that she's put in place, holding the workers accountable for the jobs. I just wanted to share that with you because that came in from a principal.
No, we need that, and that's definitely going to build the credibility going forward to ensure that when we do the broad assessment and go in probably for some sort of master plan to do full renovations and evaluations, it's going to be a big tool going forward. I think really I just want to concentrate on one more area here because it's quite an expansive, and I think we'll probably, the chairman will do some more in-depth stuff after this 30-day down the road, but I think this is a good start. The ADA, and I know it was addressed in the report requirements, I think the biggest thing is this is what could really get us, and I know that there was an overview. Can you address one more time, just some more detail? I know elevators, other evaluations have already been done, but that issue.
Yes, so regarding the ADA, my staff, the safety officer went to the schools and started identifying all the ADA deficiencies. So we have standardized checklists that we use based on the ADA mandate. So we're doing that, and we hope to complete that by this in February, and end of February, and then start addressing them. And again, talking with DFAS as far as budgeting to address them. The elevators. So what I've discovered is that the elevators are being inspected monthly, every 6 months, and annually, and 5 years. So now I've established a tracking system where the elevators, all the checklists, we review them, because right now no one's monitoring. If they did a inspection, nobody's checking if, let's say, Otis or the company really did repair that. So I established a tracking system so that way it's accountable that if the vendor does not repair it, we shouldn't see it the next month, and likewise with facilities. So the checklist, there's certain areas that are requires repair from F&M, and that have not been communicated with F&M. So now I have identified those areas of the elevator that they have to repair, and based on that checklist, a work order must be submitted to track if it was repaired or not, and how long. That I am a very good tracker, so I track everything for all the staff work, as to include the vendor. So even with the contractors with our refurbished facilities, the schools, I track them, how long it takes them to address certain things. So I think we are in a good position by tracking them to ensure repairs are done in a timely manner, but more importantly, done properly. Thank you.
So I'm going to wrap up because my time's almost up with Deputy Superintendent Jackie Kittigwa, and probably the superintendent will join in this one. I noticed the overview on protection of instructional time, instructional best practices, school safety, wellness, and the vandalism and security of course, the schools and the various locations. I wanted to go straight to curriculum and instruction and basically what is the perennial issue on teachers. That was discussed a little bit by Mr. Atta. Where are you at and how do you see it in your overview now in terms of budgeted vacancies and the capability to ensure that you have the adequate teachers, counselors, and other instructional aides to move forward? Where are you at and where do you want to be?
One of the things that I guess I found was that stacks of requests actually for off-island travel. And the concern from the board was the number of people, large number of people traveling, and traveling frequently within a calendar year. And so one of the things that we were doing, because we weren't quite sure in terms of how many teachers we have going, how many teachers' positions that we have that are vacant. So we started to do a cost analysis, because if a teacher requests to travel, then, you know, that's the salary that teacher we're paying. But what the department historically were doing is that another teacher's prep time, who's at maybe $35 an hour, would be covering at that time. So that's an additional cost to the department. And that was going on for 5 periods, depending on how many preps, you know, they have. So it's 4 to 5 versus us hiring, in this case, even a retired teacher at a higher salary to put in there as a substitute teacher, or just the standard substitute teacher at the price of $13 to $15 an hour. So what we were calculating was not just the teacher's salary, but the other person, another teacher covering, but more importantly, that is so hard to quantify, will be the instructional loss for the children. And for me, I feel that that is unconscionable, that we're going to have people go off island frequently and too many at a time, and I don't have anyone to cover a classroom. I was very upset when I heard this incident at one of our schools where there was an infraction between an adult aide and a child, and only to find out that it's because they were always in the cafeteria because they've never had a teacher for 1 semester. And that is something that we are addressing, and that's the instructional time. And that's why we're saying we're finding many different ways to find more teachers to want to come, or individuals who want to come into the school system. And we've listed several approaches that we want to do. And I don't know if you remember this, there was this program called Boots to the Classroom, when a lot of our military guys were coming, getting out of the military, and then there's a chance for them to change their career. So we wanted to recruit those individuals. We're also seeing that there are a lot of businesses now that some of them are closing. So we want to reach out to the business sector as well to find these professionals with content knowledge and skills that we can also then bring them into the classroom, and we'll do an expedited training basically for, you know, basics, introduction to teaching with the university to put them in the classrooms. I just can't honestly allow our children to go for an extended period of time without an adult in the class, a teacher in the classroom. So we've had an incident where we had 8 teachers out in a class, in a school, and immediately, rather than just having to put staff in there, we quickly went to a curriculum and instruction, and we found certified teachers there and immediately sent them to the schools to cover the classroom. So they are definitely our priorities, and we're seeking many different ways to be able to get these professionals into the classrooms. I've also requested to have a tri-board meeting so that we can look at certification. How then can we certify, whether it's limited term or emergency certified or the regular certification, to get these professionals into our classrooms? So that's very important to us. That's a top priority, actually.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, once again for this opportunity. Sounds exciting going forward, and once again, my focus and my responsibility on the issue of audits. It looks like I just want to, you probably got this in, information, Franklin, but you know, it's always been, we've got everything ready to go, and the perennial issue is months and months and months for waiting on Department of Education. So maybe now we're on track to make sure that our audits are coming out on time, and we're going to be able to budget accordingly now going forward, knowing what our expenditures are versus our supposed surpluses. So thank you, Mr. Chair, once again.
On that note, if I may, because one of the things, I've not forgotten where I came from, up there with you. I know what it's like, you know, to be able to look at the entire government, to finance and give budgets to all the different departments, and I know what it's like on our end also asking. So the approach and the drive that the team is looking at here is that we have basically set, our priorities, and it's more in terms of what do we need versus what do we want. And I have to say that with, my deputies who are working with the federal funds, Dr. Julie and Dr. Risa, is that we're transferring many of those over to federal funds to have federal funds cover it versus us putting the request under local funds. But we have to make sure, of course, that it's an allowable cost. The one thing that we also have to be very cognizant of, and I say this all the time, is that the federal government requires what they call I can't think of the word, not a matching, what's the word? Maintenance of effort. You're right, that we must show that we are using some federal funds while we're using more on the federal side, but a little on the local side. So that definitely is a very big issue. The other is we got to be very careful of is that when we were at one time using federal funds for certain programs, but if the legislature passes a law regarding that same function, automatically we're disqualified. We can't use federal funds, and so it's considered supplanting. So we want to avoid that as much as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the team. We look forward to great things going forward.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Barnett.
So just want to see, Mr. Chair. So I had to Google the definition of lackadaisical. It's an adjective, means lacking enthusiasm and determination, carelessly lazy. So Mr. Leon Guerrero, I've been able to work very closely with the Facilities and Maintenance Division. I disagree with your characterization that they're lackadaisical. And in fact, in just 3 years, we've been able to get every single school a valid sanitary permit thanks to the efforts of the Facilities and Maintenance Division, as well as all the PTOs and the parent volunteers. Some of the senators have even been out at the school. So I understand that, it's been said that we're looking at a fresh perspective and we're not trying to assign blame, but I absolutely have to defend the Facilities and Maintenance Division, which this legislature and the previous legislature has worked hard to increase the capacity of. We're trying to go to that place with GDOE where we have a maintenance division that has the plumbers, the electricians, and all of the personnel that are needed out at the school level. And I know they're out there at the schools working hard. I know that in your testimony, Superintendent Wampat, you had said that corrective actions targeted for ADA non-compliance sites are targeted for completion by the end of February 2026. And I'm assuming it's going to be these same facilities and maintenance people who are going to address a lot of these non-compliance issues. So, Mr. Leon Guerrero, no offense, but I just have to absolutely stick up for the personnel and facilities and maintenance. I understand that there's some streamlining with the process, but to just blanket call them lackadaisical, I think, especially in this hearing where we saw the chair of the education board basically call the Guam Department of Education employees who have an issue with board members overstepping their bounds. Basically, she called them liars, which I also didn't appreciate. But, that being said, I'm very encouraged that you've addressed the OPA's finding about moving the next financial audit forward. So thank you for that. And I just had a list of questions. Superintendent Wampat, again, welcome aboard. But, we hardly have the opportunity to ask these types of questions of GDOE in a public setting. So what is the status for the FB Leon Guerrero double session?
Apparently, there's been a lot of change orders at FB Leon Guerrero. In the conversation we had with them at the time when I was at the governor's office, because we were trying to coincide the building of the 20-some classrooms for Simon Sanchez so we can get them off double session, that we're trying to have it coincide with the date of the completion for FB. The contractors at that time told us it was February. But now that we're here, we have this readiness group that meets every Tuesday, school readiness group, and it's been reported to us by the principal that now there's some holdback or possibility of the school not being fully ready, such as somehow in the contract, in the scope of work to be done, they had not included the
They have not included the Wi-Fi, the fire alarm system, the fire suppressant, and the stolen copper wire that happened last month. So those were not included in the scope of work. Therefore, it has resulted to a delay of opening the school.
But in addition, what we found, which is much bigger, I mean, that's big, of course, in itself, but it will be a campus then basically without a gym. So the contractor did, like not an official assessment of the structure, and was saying that there's a possibility that either one, we need to go and totally renovate the gym, or two, we'd have to just break it down and start all over. And they gave a quote, I think, of over $2 million. It's not something yet that's official. So we're looking around to and doing an RFP to be able to bring in a structural engineer to do an assessment to tell us what the extent of either the damage or what it is that we need to do to repair or rebuild the gym.
Thank you for that. So the last time we heard from and it was the previous superintendent's administration about FB Leon Guerrero, what we were told was that construction on the school would be completed by the start of the upcoming school year, and that those students who are currently in a double session at Ukadu, they don't come home till it's after dark, that those students would then return to FBLG. So now you're just saying here on the record that that's not going to happen.
Well, I'm not saying officially it's not going to happen. It just all depends now on all those deficiencies that we need to address, to be able then to get either one, we agree to the change order and pay whatever that dollar amount is, or do we go out and do another RFP rather than continually changing orders from the current contractor. So everything that Dr. Ulloa mentioned definitely have to be addressed. One of the biggest, of course, is the copper wire that was taken for the entire school campus. And they were able to find the culprit, but the question now is restitution. We don't even know if we can even do that, and is that something that we're going to bear the cost, to put in.
Well, thank you for that update.
But we'll be happy to continue to, we'll let the chairman know and hopefully to keep you informed, because this is something that's on the top of our list as well, is to make sure that one is that we want to open, yes, FB, and we want them to go full-time. We're taking the position that we don't want double session. I'm working very closely, yes, with the FEMA people in DC and the local FEMA office here and the governor's office for the continuing to build the 20 classrooms at the Guam Housing Corporation. So $8 million had been deposited already by FEMA for that construction. We have to pay separately for the collateral equipment. Well, the AG wants us to call it now instructional equipment rather than collateral equipment. And that funds have been identified to renovate the 24 units at GHC, which could be used as additional classrooms currently it was for Simon Sanchez, but depending on the situation with FB, we might have to kind of go back to the drawing board again and see what we need to do.
Well, thank you for that update, because we had heard so many things about a temporary Sanchez campus, whether it was the Tumon shopping mall, and so now you're saying that you're proceeding forward with this building the temporary classrooms on is this the Guam Housing Corporation lots?
Yes, it's directly across FB Leon Guerrero's campus.
Thank you. And then, Mr. LG, you had said that you're also addressing, I think it was both the management and the OPA audit that talked about the lack of qualified personnel relative to GDOE, working in the GDOE finance divisions.
Yeah, it wasn't me that said it, but it was applicable to me. What was said by the public auditor when he was getting my attention in one of the meetings was, please put some effort and resources into bringing, not only filling a position like an empty controller, but bringing a skilled individual, quality talent. And then he also said, if you can find and get quality talent, you need to pay them so you can retain them before somebody else lures them away. So that was the advice. We heard the message. We're opening up some interviews now for that. We are following up on that. It will be done.
Okay. Madam Superintendent, I've heard previous grumblings about, the board authorizing hiring. Some positions aren't being authorized for hire. Is this going to be an issue when you go and you try and address some of the staffing concerns that have been presented in the different audits?
No. All the positions that are budgeted in our budget, when there are vacancies, we are replacing those positions if they are available. And I say that because we don't necessarily, like I said earlier, we don't have, I hate to say this, but we have about 58 teacher positions right now that we haven't filled. And so we're constantly recruiting, but if there are no applicants, then it becomes very difficult. So we're not saying we're not hiring. All those positions have been budgeted, and either through attrition or retirement or just resignation, then we're hiring back, absolutely.
In your testimony, it was just really a sentence here, but this is something that we've addressed, there's been efforts to address relative to teacher certification. In your testimony, you say you want to work closely with the certification office to revisit their requirements for certification. Can you expand on that?
Well, what we're finding, well, let me go back a little bit. The Department of Education used to give the certification for individuals who want to teach. And of course, there were some discrepancies there, and the senators decided to change that and created the certification office and took that function out of DOE and created then now what we call the certification office. So what they've done is that then they have actually removed what we used to offer were emergency certification for those coming, straight to us with no education back. I mean, they'll have a degree, but they won't have the educational foundation courses necessary. They would not have taken, let's say, the praxis test, and so forth, and done in, school practicum. So they do that, and right now we're finding that there are teachers who are coming to the island and would like to teach, but are having some difficulty of going through the hurdle of becoming, which we would have probably, if we were in control, we would have said, I would have done an emergency certification and worked with the university to, give them the foundation courses that they would need while they're going to school. But now that is not the case. You come in with a bachelor's degree, and then they look at the courses that you've taken. You must take now, before it used to be Praxis 1 and Praxis 2, now there's the core praxis that you would take. But some of the problems we're finding out is that teachers who are coming to us who have taken the praxis maybe 15, 20 years ago are not being recognized by our certification office, but yet they are being recognized elsewhere in the mainland. And they're picking them up, and here we are. When you really look at where we're at, I can't recruit teachers from Taiwan, from Japan, from Korea, so I have to look around our area, our region, so I want to make it, so much easier for us to be able to recruit individuals. I want us to be able to pick up other professionals. Like, for example, engineers. Let's say they don't want to be an engineer anymore, but they have a lot of math background. I want to pick them up as a math teacher, but I can't. And then I'm hearing also that there are professors from the university and GCC who are retired and may want to come and teach with us, but they can't again because there are all these other certification requirements. So what I want to do is to start that conversation with the tri-board to look at that and see what we can do. Because the legislature, in its wisdom, of course, decided to create this teacher education, program at the university where we put them through school and then ultimately they come to us. But people are not now as excited to go into education, and that's something, again, we're addressing. We want to find out what's going on and how can we get them interested, in becoming, teachers. And that's why we're saying one of the efforts we're going to do is to go to the university, talk to, the students in the education, college, and see what can we do? What are some of the hurdles that, we can address?
I appreciate that, Superintendent or Acting Superintendent Wampat, because, just anecdotally, when my colleagues and I attended the University of Guam graduation, one thing that I think we recognized was there weren't as many, graduates out of the College of Education and teachers that, we would like to have seen. So I definitely appreciate that. Thank you for your answer, but I wanted to also ask about principal rotations for high schools. I know that we've rotated the principals at the elementary and the middle school level, but just some parents and stakeholders have been asking me if there are plans to rotate principals at the high school level.
Well, I'll be honest, that is right now not on our radar. But just historically, at least, as a former school principal, and there are the pros and cons, of course, about moving principals. And there's research as well also that, speaks to that. And just like with teachers who teach at different grade levels or, whether elementary, middle, or high school. But just think of this, of a brand new teacher coming in and a brand new school administrator coming in, the excitement, the motivation, the dedication, of everything. They're just so gung-ho when they come in. And then what we see is that when you sometimes stay in a position for so long, I'm sure you've heard this with some of your professors, and I've heard this from students where it's the same test that's been given every year and the students know it, others can just get a copy of it. It's just nothing really has changed. And when I was a school principal, and I know that after 5 years, I was ready to move on. I wanted new challenges, I love the excitement of having to start something. I know there are those who don't want to move. Research have shown that yes, after 5 years, we should consider, the individual, the professional should consider, moving along. What I like about that as well, for me at least with school administrators and teachers, is that because I would like to pull somebody that I know in the classroom that potentially can be a school administrator, and I would like to mentor them to eventually move, up and move on. But that's my personal opinion. We definitely, now that you've mentioned it, I'm sure that, Deputy Jackie can discuss that with the school principals. But definitely it's always to benefit the school. Everything we do would be to benefit the school and not to be disruptive in any way.
I might have missed it earlier, but when you were talking about teacher vacancies, did you address the deployment of the instructional coaches out to the schools? Because this is something that we'd been bringing up with the previous administration. Was they had said, there's anywhere from 15 to 20 instructional coaches, and I think we had received an initial commitment that they'd be deployed out to the schools to address the shortages.
As I told you, our first priority, our top priority are the classrooms. And that if I have certified teachers, yes, at central office, that we would assess exactly what it is that they're doing, how are they providing services that directly impacts the children. And if there are others professionally who are not like certified teachers but are classified as program coordinators 3 or 4 that can take on that additional responsibility, and we put the certified teacher in the classroom. So like I said, the classrooms are a priority for us, for the children to have a teacher, certified teacher at the schools rather than at Central.
In your testimony, you say that the management audit report will be reviewed to identify areas aligned with strategic plan for further review and action. And then you further say the board is committed to fully support the management team, which is very fortunate for you because it appears they've done a 180 as they gave the previous superintendent, a really hard time. And I understand the sentiment and the idea that you guys are going to work closely together. And, that might maybe lead to an unwillingness to address some of the management audit findings relative to the board members overstepping their authority. I know you spend a lot of time in education. I'm hoping that you don't dismiss this concern, which has been brought up not just to the auditors, but by many employees across the department. So how do you plan to address those specific critical findings and high priority recommendations relative to the Board of Education members overstepping their bounds as reported in the management audit?
Well, I try to always keep my board members informed. I want them to know of what's happening in the school before it hits the media, the press, especially, anything negative. So that's what I have been doing right now with the board members, letting them know so that we'll be very transparent. So everything that we know is going on in the schools, we let them know. And personally, for me, of course, I guess it's because we, here in the island, it's a small community. We know everyone, and, you can talk to them. And for example, just in a recent board meeting, I could just lean over to the chairman and I say, move on with this or put this on hold. I can kind of have that kind of relationship where I can talk to them. And if they are, and I'll be very upfront, is that if, yes, I feel that they're micromanaging, I will definitely let them know personally that they are. Or they're nearing, micromanaging. So I feel comfortable doing that. I mean, sure, it might be a risk to do that for a fear that they might want to fire me before being very upfront with them, but they must know. And I feel, yes, very strongly too, is that all boards really should go through some type of training so they know exactly what
and the
their
audit
role
did
is.
also recommend that, right? And I'm just bringing this up because right now it's like we're kumbaya, everyone's on the same page, management, the board, holding hands, but all it takes is one falling out, and then we're going to be stuck with these same issues. So I ask that you address these issues, not because you're currently serving as superintendent, but for all the other superintendents that are going to come through the department, because while you're enjoying a great relationship with the board, we need to put these concerns and be able to address them, for the transparency and accountability of the department, but also to support the employees in the GDOE. I know my time's up, Mr. Chair, so
And just to let you know that I did bring it up with my management team about, the audits, and they're all involved. I mean, I got them involved in the financial audit as well because they need to know. I've also included them and sent them copies of the management audit so that then they can read it. And everyone, we all agree that yes, all the issues that were brought there, and if they are valid, definitely, is something that we want to look at. We're not going to ignore it. But I do know for a fact too, whenever you do some type of interviews, as a former school administrator, I hear rumors. But I always believe in listening to all sides of the story and finding, and then validate. That's what we always say. Sure, somebody would tell you this is the case, you may trust it, but validate it. And that's exactly what it is we want to do. We want to make sure that anything that might hurt the department or something that we can fix the department moving forward, we would do. Because that's one of the first things we said we want to do. We know that the public has lost trust in us, and we want to bring that back. We want to bring back trust, we want to bring back transparency and accountability. So most definitely, regardless whether it is accepted or rejected, it's still within our hands. We did pay for it, so partially we have to pay the other half of it. So yes, we'll look at it, we'll use it.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Senator Barnett. Senator Larhi.
Mr. Chair. Thank you all. Welcome to the new management team, to the new superintendent, Speaker Wampat, and thank you, Frank, for still being there as auditor. And I really appreciate your advice and recommendations to the management team. And it sounds like perfect. If we follow those, it's really a matter, and I completely agree with you, it's priorities, right? What are going to be your priorities? And I appreciate your outlining of them, and you're telling us that though you're going to be transparent about that. And I appreciate the systems that you put into place. That I feel like that's one of the complaints I receive. It's kind of just that communication to the principals, right? That what maintenance is going to happen and when, how long do they have to wait, how are they going to deal with it in the meantime, things like that. I'm just so glad we are able to move on from the times when principals were uniformly told, we have no money for that. And that was what they would say all the time. We were told we have no money for that. I hope they never hear that again. I hope they hear that's going to be put on the list, and this is where it goes on this list, and we will re-examine our priorities. But so priorities, I agree. Please keep transparent about that. I don't agree that the maintenance team was anything short, because we never heard complaints about them. We heard praises up and down about them doing really good work, about the school aides actually doing maintenance work way above and beyond. The principals, the teachers, everybody had to do that. So I just want to thank them again for that. But I do appreciate your system that's going to keep everybody informed and know that they are being addressed. Is that then, would you say, Dr. Joa, that you are the priority decider of the maintenance projects at this point?
Yes, I am. And it is based on work orders that were being submitted.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And so you're going to look at that regularly and make priorities so the principals know. All right. And then about the management audit says will be reviewed and aligned with those issues aligned with strategic plan will be addressed. This strategic plan is one that's already in place? Okay, and that was board approves of this strategic plan. There's no conflict there with the board?
No, it's a 5-year plan that was developed already.
All right. Things that are not on that strategic plan?
What I'm saying, we definitely have to respond to the ones that are on the strategic plan, because that is, like a mandate from the board. You're right. Okay. But then all the other concerns that were brought up is something that we are definitely, looking into ourselves.
Okay, great. So can you just explain this request to fill? You approved multiple requests to fill for special education positions, and you said you came in, there was a stack of requests to fill positions. These are coming from where? The teachers, the principals?
No, yes, the requests to fill are normally the ones from the school principals. So we've made that definitely a priority as well. We're filling as much as we can when we have the applicants, to fill those positions as quickly as we can to get them into the classroom. So yes, we have authorized to fill those. Those are the ones that either, one, that is part of our budget, and two, they're part of the collective bargaining, agreement that we have. And those are like school aides to put in the classrooms.
All right. Is there any reason that we would expect to hear again that these are being delayed?
No, we have not. I mean, they come into my office, and normally I go through everything I have to sign at the end of the day. Then they go out, so it'll just be more than a day or two before it goes down to HR for their signature. For their personnel action.
All right. And I appreciate, I think you're using different terms, but very much unified in the approach. Student outcomes is what you used. Schools first, children first. And I like this approach that everything is tied to the school children's and really how they are doing, right? So, and I think a lot of that has to be how satisfied are our principals with Central, right? And their responses. And of course, we have the broader issues, including financial management in general, responses to audits, and the controller was one of the issues. I'm glad you're going to take care of that. It says, is the board preventing you from hiring any personnel that you need? Is that an impediment or not?
No.
Okay.
The only positions, of course, I would not be able to fill, like I said, will be either new requests that's not budgeted, and if it's not part of the collective bargaining agreement. Those are our top priorities. And when there's anything new, we'll have to assess specifically why. And more importantly is that, do we really need it?
Yes, okay. And then there are some, the financial audit said GDOE does not have procurement policies that meet 2 CFR 200, certain citations, right? Certain procurement policies to require, it looks like, competition versus using specific brand names, things like this. But these policy changes, is this something you can do yourself in the procurement office, or is that something the board has to do?
Well, I'll address that. There's a lot of moving parts in DOE, and there's a lot of moving parts financially in DOE. There's federal grants, there's people overseeing the federal grants, there's all kinds of moving parts. But I will tell you that procurement law is procurement law. So sometimes in the past, because of emergencies or it just had to be done for whatever the reason, decisions were made that would not be made today. Under the new management team, there's we really don't want to be in paper all the time about audits and violations. Nobody wants that, right? So we've made it clear to everybody who's got some state involvement in this procurements or requisitions or purchase orders, that there is a proper way to do it, and we have drawn the line in the sand moving forward. That's what we're following, and I don't anticipate. I'm hoping that the next audit that we have that is under our influence, we won't see that as a finding.
All right, and we've had a huge problem in the government-wide about a delayed audit, and that's because of individual agencies having delayed audits. So this is very critical. Can't stress that enough. That this is important for all of the people of Guam and all of the government of Guam.
So the public auditor made that crystal clear in his discussions with us that we're the long pole in the tent, and it is our focus that will not be this year, that we are underway, we're ahead of schedule, and I intend to maintain schedule, if not be ahead of schedule.
That's great.
Thank you.
Good news, thank you. All right, so one of the things that the management audit pointed out was, of course, the English language arts and math performance, and so you've talked about that. Thank you for addressing that straight on and not avoiding that. I really appreciate that. And it talks about they recommend enhanced professional development to improve staff skills, measurable performance metrics, and you're saying that those performance metrics are being put in place?
Yes, that one of the things that we were concerned about is that principals have told us, at least, and that's where Miss Jackie's actually working on, is that they used to be called have everyone all come on one day for professional development, and it may not be relevant to either the different levels or the subject matter. So now then is what Jackie is also doing, and Dr. Risa is doing, is making sure that the schools who are going to do professional development separately from other schools, that they must, of course, show the value benefit, not just to the time that the teachers are being trained, but more importantly is that it actually filters down into the classroom. So, and by doing so, then we'll be able to see now the results of our numeracy and literacy scores go up.
Right. I'd like to, I know you're concerned about the off-island travel, but I'd like to think that that's intended also to enhance professional development in some instances, and I guess if that can be proven, if we can find ways, we should take advantage of that and not return that federal money.
That's true, but we're not saying we're cutting it off entirely, but I'm not going to send 7 people all to the same place.
All right.
And that's the value that we want to bring back and have them train more people in the system. Or when you look at the total dollar amount, can I bring that professional to Guam, and then I'll train,
Yeah.
all of the teachers.
All right.
That's what we're talking about.
Thank you. And then one of the final, in the management audit that was cited by the financial audit was this clearer boundaries between the Guam Educational Board and superintendent's responsibilities to improve governance. Do you intend to make any changes in that area or recommendations in that area?
No,
Based on the management audit?
No, I've not given that yet some thought.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you.
But please do.
But I mean, no, you're right.
Yeah.
We will.
Okay. And then my final question is, in the last board meeting, they talked about this bonuses, rewards, and incentives programs, that they were working with the governor about a previously discussed issue and are now awaiting something from the superintendent, that it's gone through several iterations. They're still waiting for a final or updated document before it gets to the board after they put it through committee. Is this for teachers? Is this a policy to give bonuses, rewards, and incentives to teachers?
No, it's not just to teachers. It started out with that, but it has now expanded and extended into central office as well. Now, I don't have the full story, but I do know that, yes, HR is looking into it, and the boards basically have kind of put it on hold for the time being, that they do their research. What they found was that, at least some of it, I don't know, Franklin, whether you know much about it, but they found some discrepancies right now, and until we get a handle of it, we can't continue to move forward until we address some of the discrepancies that were done in the past.
But you intend to move forward with a bonus incentive program for teachers as
once we get all the information, then we'll be able to go back.
all right. It's your HR, or are you waiting for the governor for something?
No, this is the HR. I heard, yes, I was given a courtesy by one of the staffers who went to meet with the governor, and the governor called me and told me the same thing, but that she couldn't be involved in it and wasn't going to be making decisions outside of DOE.
Frank, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, Senator, maybe I can just provide some insight. The bonus rewards and incentive program, the BRIP, that's passed through legislation, and it allows GDOE through board policy to establish just that, the bonuses, the incentives, at a percentage of compensation or a percentage of pay above compensation. To your point and to your question, was it eligible for teachers? Sure it was. What it was there are different factors for implementation in order to process this correctly. So where we stand today is that policy has been, I think it was put in abeyance until they get a standing SOP and until they look at the equity issues that were kind of challenged with different rates being awarded to different individuals and who was actually allowed and some of the implementation details. I don't want to speak too much to the details because as your internal audit was requested and we're finalizing that audit will be shared with the board, with our management team, and of course with OPA. But there is a standing piece of legislation that allows GDOE the authority to implement, similar to a RAS, a bonus and reward program that gives certain individuals in the department compensation over base.
All right, so you're reviewing that. That's good news. And so if after your review would allow them to move forward, it's not the board that's impeding that?
It's not our review that's impeding it. What was put on hold was for my understanding, and I wasn't at that board meeting, I apologize. In reviewing the minutes, it was held in suspension until formalized SOPs were brought forth so they can look at the equity and the kind of the processing of how they're going to treat that moving forward. We're auditing backwards.
All right, so Central does the SOP and gives it to the board, then the board may be able to move forward with this.
Correct.
All right, and the teacher pay review, is there any ongoing teacher pay review right now? That's allowed by statute for DOA to do this? That's how the last teacher increases were?
No, the last was that payment that took place, when the governor had asked the department to give the teacher pay raise. That was the last that I
Yeah,
know.
but that's pursuant to a pay review done by DOA supposedly. So I'm just asking if you're aware of any other ones going
No.
on.
No.
All right.
Thank
Thank you
you,
so
Senator
much. Thank
Terwilliger.
you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again, and good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Vice Speaker Audit, do you have any questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions for the superintendent and her deputies. But congratulations on being selected as superintendent and the appointment of your deputies. I think 30 days is just a little short period, and hopefully when come back in March, I believe the chairman was looking at another March oversight hearing for Department of Education, that we get a better idea and a better understanding of where you guys are at, what you guys have been doing, and what's the plan moving forward. I think my only concern when I was sharing with the chairman is that the board members are not here to field some questions. I was watching earlier, and I was surprised that they didn't stay for the questions from my colleagues. And I think that it's very important that if the OPA can give the leeway to allow the GDOE and the board members to go before him to present his OPA audit, they should have at least had the courtesy to stay behind and answer questions from this panel as well. And Mr. Public Auditor, thank you for allowing them to adjust it, because your time is just as precious as well. And doing these audits and performing them takes time. You take your time away from that to be here for this. And the board members should have at least, they knew this oversight was going to be conducted today. They knew it was going to be several hours long. They should have adjusted their schedules as everyone else have adjusted theirs to be here as well. But other than that, I look forward to seeing you folks again, and good luck. And I think the bottom line is we all need to try to do what we can for the education of our children. And you guys, on this step forward, we look forward to meeting with you folks again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Mr. Auditor, Dr. Speaker Cruz, we can go ahead and do your, I feel like we've addressed some of the stuff in the audit, but we rearranged the, but I think it's important, obviously Dr. Wanpat will, but at least, before he goes over his slides, Vice Speaker already mentioned, we'll probably have a follow-up oversight. I think what's going to be important, not just over with the financial audit, I think the expectation from the body, the legislature, is what your plan of action is going to be, or corrective action for this audit, and also the management audit, whether or not the board approves it. There are still some valid stuff that I think the legislature is going to expect some action and answers to. Thank you. If we get the slides up for the OPA so that we can.
Also, before the slides go up, Mr. Vice Speaker, any invitation by the board for my attendance and my team's attendance at a board meeting to do a presentation will be accepted. And we can go there personally to make the.
Thank you, Mr. OPA. I truly appreciate that.
Also, before things go up, we did have a status meeting on Monday with GDOE, and I thought that the Gantt chart that EY said the trial balance was supposed to be March 3rd. I was ready to pull my hair out, and then Mr. Leon Guerrero said, "No, we already got that in." I was shocked. So I'm very happy. They're way ahead, a month ahead. I was expecting, because the purpose that I had on Monday was to find out how they were doing, because on Tuesday morning I had a presentation, I had a Zoom meeting with Department of Interior that wanted to know what the status of the audits were. And I need to know where all my component units are at. And I was very happy to get the report from Education. Not happy with all the rest of them, but Department of Education, I was finally happy that they're ahead. I can't even remember when I could say that. Ahead of schedule by a month.
Thank you. All right, let's go. We get the slides up and we can start.
Actually, we could dispense of the slides, and because a lot of the discussion that happened earlier today actually did discuss a lot of these things. So if you don't mind, I could just go over also in the interest of time, because I think I'm standing between lunch and, right? Thank you, first of all, Senator Borja, for the opportunity for the Office of Public Accountability to present the highlights for the fiscal year 2024 financial audit. Unfortunately, my name is Vincent Duenas. I am the Supervising Accountability Auditor with the Guam OPA. Unfortunately, it would have been better if we were discussing the FY 2025. I think this would be the opportune time, but a lot of the discussion that has happened in the past couple of hours was about the need for the improvements in the GDOE. This has all happened, right? Of course, prior to Dr. Wampat's tenure. A lot of the information that is going to be presented is from already, it's dated, right, from 2024. Senator, you asked us to talk about the OPA's FY 2024 audit findings, management audit observations, and corrective actions and responses to repeated findings. So a presentation was prepared, but like I was mentioning earlier, a lot of it was discussed. To start off, I wanted to talk about two definitions. One is unmodified opinion, and the other one is a qualified opinion. An unmodified opinion is when the auditor has not identified any material misstatements of the financial statements and no scope limitations exist. The auditor will report an unmodified opinion and will include a statement that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material aspects. Okay, so that's the definition of an unmodified opinion. A qualified opinion, which sounds cool, like good, we did a great job, we're qualified, is actually in the opposite when talking audit speak. It may be stated due to a material misstatement of the financial statements or from an inability to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence based on the audit and on the procedures performed. So the unmodified is good, that's clean. The qualified is not good. Okay, so to open with that, for FY 2024, GDOE did receive an unmodified clean opinion from independent auditors Ernst & Young on its FY 2024 financial statements and on compliance with the consolidated grant to the outlying areas, which is a major federal program. On the flip side, a qualified opinion on all other major federal programs was identified specifically with the Child Nutrition Cluster, Special Education Cluster, and Education Stabilization Fund, the ESF. And of course, as we all know, the GDOE has remained a high-risk grantee with the U.S. Department of Education for the past 22 years. So the way that the financial audit is packaged, what we have is first the financial statements, and in the financial statements, it includes the auditor's opinion. That's the only thing the auditors really prepare. Then the second part is the management discussion and analysis. That's what management's observations were during the course of the fiscal year, and this is coming from them. So a lot of the highlights that I'm going to be talking about were actually coming and pulled from the MD&A, that's the short way. Of course, then the other parts are the notes to the financial statements and then the actual financial statements itself. That's one part, that's just the financial statements. The second part is the compliance report, and that's where we looked at the CFA, the Schedule of Expenditure of Federal Awards, and what is required by the auditors is to identify, there's a threshold amount that's required by federal law to look into those. So if a certain amount of expenditures were made by over 750,000, then it's an automatic, we're gonna go look into those. So the CFA actually looks into the federal programs, and what we've identified is there are actually four federal agencies that we basically get our monies from when it comes and deals with the federal awards. And of course, the lion's share does come from the U.S. Department of Education, but there are other few smaller ones like DOI has a few, Health and Human Services, and there's one more that's in there. And then in the compliance report, it also talks about the findings. So with that, there's two different kinds of levels of egregiousness for findings. One is called a material weakness. That's the one that's more like, it's bad. Whereas you have the significant deficiencies where it doesn't rise to the level of being there. So that's where it comes into the third component, which is a management letter. So all of these items, this all package of the financial audit, there's actually 4 different documents that comprise of the financial audit. Okay. So for FY 2024, GDOE actually closed with an operational surplus of $67.4 million, and that was driven by substantially higher revenues, actual general fund expenditures below budgeted and appropriate levels, and a $51 million transfer of locally funded payroll expenditures to the American Rescue Plan for reimbursement. Some of the items that were discussed earlier and which were significantly highlighted in our highlights for this particular audit was, of course, the untimely issuance of the financial audit, and that's something that the Chief Auditor, Frank Kuppeners, talked about. Of course, the GDOE management team experiencing an increased turnover and instability. Revenues, these are all the items that were highlighted, right? Revenues increased by $97.3 million. Expenditures also increased by $62.6 million. Local appropriations increased by $20.2 million. $12.1 million in expired and lost federal grant funds. That's an item that we highlighted. Payroll expenditures also increased, and the employee count and student enrollment decreased. There's the $51 million in local payroll expenditures that was transferred to ARP. Of course, the high-risk grantee status and U.S. Department of Education federal fiscal year 2024 specific conditions. And then lastly, it was the GDOE's corrective action plan to address the material weaknesses and significant deficiencies. Just to touch on the untimely issuance of the financial audit, in FY 2023, right, so we're talking about 24 now, but in 23, the financial audit and single audit was actually issued on November 6th of 2024. So that one was also late. That was 129 days past the due date of June 30th of 2024. This one also for FY 2024 was just issued on January 2nd, was also significantly delayed, even more, right? We're talking about November from the past, but now we're talking about a good 9 months right after the fiscal year. And although June 30th is the statutory deadline, that's the statutory deadline for the entire government of Guam. And as we all know, the Guam Department of Education is the biggest government of Guam agency. And like the Speaker Terlahi had just mentioned, having them come into the fold with the big audit or the general fund audit is extremely crucial. And of course, I think Mr. Liang Guerrero also made that comment that it's imperative, and it's good to have him talk about that, and it's refreshing to hear his approach to this, because hopefully we're gonna be here in another 30 days and we'll get another update on that. But you know, it's really the last time we've actually had GDOE come in timely was when we looked at the records of FY 2021. So it's been a couple of years since we've actually had them come in timely. And that around the COVID time, that's the last time. Also, when the big audit, when the general fund audit came in timely, was just FY 2020. So this all hampers their ability to make sound decisions, also your ability to actually review the documents or review the audits. There's a lot of implications, basically, that happen as to when these audits are not completed timely. So what had happened was when for this particular fiscal year for 2024, management decided to address the reasons why this particular audit was delayed was because there was insufficient qualified personnel in the financial affairs division. So what they actually did was they actually pulled the chief auditor and his team. The education board did this, They assigned them to complete all of the final adjustments, prepare the schedule of expenditure of federal awards, and compile audit documentation. There was a GDOE deputy finance superintendent before, acting controller, and additional accounting staff. However, the audit readiness for this particular audit was lacking. The way things were done with the IAO, in particular with Franklin Cooper Nurse and his team, they provided this limited conditional support to pretty much maintain the integrity of the financial statements, but they had to formally document that them performing these operational accounting services or functions, it actually violates independent audit standards. So basically, Frank can't go and audit his own organization because he's doing a management responsibility. And we're hoping that in the future and it can't be stressed enough, that this type of intervention is in an extraordinary circumstance and it doesn't recur again. So that's one thing that was basically highlighted in this particular audit. When this audit was issued in December 2025, when it was dated, at the time, GDOE has not closed its record for 2025, despite the statutory fiscal year end of September 30th and their final closing deadline of November 15th. So as you heard Mr. Lianguro say, when he came on board his first week, you're 2 months late, that's where it came from. Based on the current status, and again, this was all documented in the MD&A, management at this time identified that the FY 2025 financial audit might also be at risk of being late. Okay. We discussed the GDOE management team. I think this might be moot at the point, but according to the opening statement from Speaker Wampat, her contract still with the Attorney General's office. So this item that we talked about was the instability and the turnover of management. There were just significant turnovers in executive leadership, several interim appointments made until an appointment was finalized in July 2023. This is for the previous superintendent. And then, of course, he announced his resignation effective December 31st. And then they did the expedited recruitment for the current superintendent. So this has actually been talked about and discussed in previous audits also, where leadership turnover is also extended to other key management positions, affecting GDOE's capacity for sustained leadership, disrupting decision-making, delaying implementation of strategic initiatives, and hindering organizational continuity. Another item that we highlighted, of course, was their revenues and their expenditures. Revenues significantly increased by $97.3 million. So it went from $377.8 million in FY23 to $475.1 in FY2024. This was mainly due to an increase in federal grant revenues, totaling $74.7 million. And then when you combine that also with an increase in local appropriations from the legislature of $22.6 million. So there was a combination there. The $74.7 million increase in federal grant revenues was largely due to the transfer of $51 million in local teacher payroll costs to the ARP for reimbursement. And of course, the $22.6 million that I talked about with the local appropriations, it included $2.4 million in disaster-related general fund support, $4.7 million, which was a pass-through from DOA for the school leaseback payments, and $10 million in supplemental funding for the Chamorro language program and other operational needs. So that was the revenues. Now for the expenditures, that also saw an increase of $62.6 million. This one was largely due to increases of $26.4 million in contractual and $11 million in salaries, benefits, and retiree health care benefits. This was partially offset by decreases in equipment of $4.8 million, power of $1.9 million, and a decrease of $1.8 million in the first generation trust fund. So despite all of the overall increases in expenditures, GDOE incurred general fund expenditures of $225.8 million, which was significantly below the budgeted amount of $351.1 million and the appropriated amount of $266.8 million in FY 2024. So as previous Senator Duenas was talking about the lapses. He was talking about, you know, that discussion, and I was hoping he would be here to hear that because he actually did have something to say about that, but that's where that grew or extended from. Another item highlighted was the local appropriations did increase by 20.2 million. That was, of course, made by the previous with the Guam legislature. Expired and lost federal grants. So in this one, we highlighted $12.1 million was actually in risk or at risk of being expired or lost. In FY 2024 and 2025, several of GDOE's major U.S. Department of Education grant awards expired with substantial unliquidated balances. As of December 2025, approximately $12.1 million in federal funds had expired and is at risk at loss. The largest unspent balances occurred in the Consolidated Grant, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act programs, the ARP Individuals with Disabilities, and then the ESF-2 grant. These expired balances demonstrate weaknesses in GDOE's grant management capacity, including insufficient ability to implement program activities within the required grant performance and liquidation periods. Despite multiple grants receiving liquidation expenses, the department was unable to properly utilize the $12.1 million in available federal resources, resulting in lost opportunities to deliver special education services, early intervention support, and other supplies, equipment, and services to support public education. So these programs were never really fully funded, but never realized. Another item we highlighted was the payroll expenditures increase. However, the employee count and student enrollment decrease. The total amount went from the salaries and benefits, including retirement and healthcare benefits, are primary components of GDOE's expenditures, and they account for 67.7% total. Personnel costs increased by 11 million in FY24, and as of September 2024, the total number of GDOE employees decreased by 202 employees, going from 3,407 employees in FY23 to 3,000 down 3,205 in FY 2024. Another item that we discussed was the 51 million in local payroll expenditures that were transferred to ARP. So a section of the ARP Act, which was section 2001E1, it mandates that local education agencies reserve 20% of their total ARP awards to address learning loss through various evidence-based programs. DOE attempted to meet this requirement by soliciting professional consulting services, but the procurement failed, preventing them from obligating funds before the grant's expiration. In a last-minute effort to comply on September 29, 2024, one day before the end of the performance period, GDOE sought to transfer $51 million from locally funded teacher payroll expenditures to the ARP. But this request was denied due to its misalignment with the approved budget. After amending their requests on September 22, 2025, GDOE secured approval for a total of $54 million in extended liquidation, inclusive of this $51 million in payroll expenditures and the $3 million in outstanding federal payroll receivables. The delayed approval resulted in the expenditure transfer occurring in FY 2026 rather than within a period of performance for the ARP, indicating that the ARP funds were not utilized as originally intended, but for last-minute pivots to secure grant funds. As a result of this transfer, GDOE's ending fund balance reflected a surplus of $77 million, representing unassigned and uncommitted local cash resources. Two more items to discuss that we highlighted, of course, GDOE's high-risk grantee status. They're going on their 22nd year. And of course, the specific conditions that the U.S. Department of Education has placed on the department is actually for FY 2024, it marked the 12th year that GDOE has incurred local expenditures associated with addressing its high-risk grantee status with U.S. Department of Ed. The high-risk designation and imposition of specific conditions only pertains to US DOE grants that are awarded to DOE. In July 2024, US DOE issued GDOE's 2024 specific conditions, removing the third-party fiduciary agent requirement and emphasizing the structure of the Internal Audit Office as an independent reviewer of internal processes for accountability and oversight. A new condition also mandates that the Internal Audit Office and the Guam Office of Public Accountability, our office, conduct periodic audits of GDOE's management of US Ed funds, which we actually have a couple of current ongoing audits that we will be reporting on later on this year. Of course, the other component of the financial audit that makes up the financial audit was the compliance report. In that one, the auditors identified 3 material weaknesses in GDOE's internal control over financial reporting, and there are a laundry list of findings. I think, Senator, one of the things that you asked us was to identify how many were repeat findings going back 5 years. We did find that there were 2 that were 2 recurring findings that have been there for the past couple of years. And we do have the list that was provided in the PowerPoint. For this particular year in FY 2024, however, there were 5 findings that were repeat from the previous year in 2023. But the 2 that I was mentioning were like 23, 22, 21, and 20. So it went all the way back there. So those are items that management have yet to address. The question, Senator, also that you requested us to ask was what formal recommendations were made to GDOE and the Guam Education Board. When recommendations are made in this particular instance, the financial audit, is always addressed to the specific agencies, whichever division or whatnot is being recommended or being reviewed at that point in time. So no recommendations were made to the Guam Education Board. One specific recommendation was made to GDOE management, and then the rest of them were made to the specific department heads, the divisions where the findings were affected. There were $1 million total that were identified as question costs, and those were related to GDOE's internal control over compliance for the major federal programs. As I had mentioned earlier about the qualified opinions on all of the major federal programs, that's where the $1 million in aggregate. So there's a few, items that were questioned here, questioned there. And just to note that when question costs are made or are accounted for, is what the auditors do is we're actually taking samples of the totality of the transactions that were made in the whatever program that there is. So we're just taking samples, and from there, we're just getting what the behavior is in the types of spending, and not necessarily looking at 100% of the expenditures. So that 1 million was just what was tested. So there's a potential for more, but we don't opine on that. It's just on what was tested. I just want to make that clear. There was also a management letter that was included that talked about 8 deficiencies and other matters that are all included, of course, in the packet. That's also how I was talking about earlier, the significant deficiencies where it didn't rise up to the level of being a material weakness. However, there have been instances in the past where items were identified in the management letter for years and years and years and years, to the point where it had to rise up and become a material weakness. Regarding the corrective action plan, GDOE did include a corrective action plan to address these findings. And as with all reports, not only with performance audits, but also with the financial audits, they were included. The actual management response was included in the compliance report as an attachment, so that we could see where they disagreed with the findings or agreed with the findings. And there were some disagreements. In this case, they disagreed with 4 of the findings, and then they actually agreed with 7 of the findings. When this report was issued on January 2nd, there was still 1 response pending for 1 division for 1 of the findings. I do recall late last year, the public auditor, we were kind of giving some leeway to the organization, knowing that they were going through some organizational changes. However, it came to the point in time where no, we're not we're done. You know, we're gonna have to issue this audit because what you'll know today after our annual report is being released as we speak, one of the items that the public auditor has been meeting with, or one of the things that we talk about in our annual report is the federal government has taken notice that we are being late with our financial audits. They have taken notice to the point where status meetings are being called bi-weekly by the U.S. Department of Interior Office of Insular Affairs. And the public auditor has had to sit through these meetings to explain and provide status updates. And at that point in time, when he got the first notice that we're going to have this meeting, that's when, you know, we had to put the stop to GDOE and get this audit out, and that's the reason why it got out on January. It was actually issued on New Year's Eve, the December 31st, and then after a couple of days, we publicly issued it on January 2nd. With that, Senators, those were a majority of the findings. You know, there's a lot of information, but in the actual financial audit, and that we can go into greater detail. If you just read the notes to the financial statements, there's a lot of detailed information in there that will talk about not only what was highlighted in our highlights, but anything and everything you ever wanted to know about GDOE is in here. And a lot of questions could be, you know, garnered from that to ask management or just get clarification. All the answers to your questions will actually be found in the notes to the financial statements. And when you look at the makeup of the financial statements, it's like the most pages because it's all written out in detail on what you all need to know. Okay, that's all I wanted to highlight for this. Public Auditor, do you have anything else?
No. Besides the findings, I can't stress enough for all of you to please read the compliance reports that are attached, because there they have separate findings and recommendations on problems that should be addressed. And so it's important you look at that. It's like a report card. It breaks it down and it says significant and major deficiencies in the financial statement, significant and major deficiencies in the compliance, the UG audit, the Uniform Guidance Audit on the federal programs, and then they'll go through the list of all the federal programs that they have, and they'll announce whether or not they found them to be unmodified, whether they were qualified, or a third one, disclaimed, where they're just, the auditors can't make any decision because the departments or the agencies aren't able to provide sufficient information or any information for them to be able to opine on. Okay? So, but please, we spend an enormous amount of money on getting these audits done. And when we issue them, I'm hoping that everybody just doesn't stop with the highlights that are prepared by the staff to highlight it, because it's imperative that you read through it. You read through it and you'll see the management discussion and analysis of their perspective. But then you'll read through the findings in the back on the auditor's perspective of where the difficulties are. And then when you get to the compliance report, you'll see what the major and significant deficiencies are that need to be addressed in each of the departments. And when we finally issue the Guam-wide audit, hopefully sometime this month, that you really stop and look at the compliance report. And because management has to look at that, because that's the only way they know where the problems are and what needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Auditor. I have one question before I open up to my colleagues. Just your thoughts on the governor's proposal in our budget request to take over. Do you think that that's to take over the finances of the Department of Education? Do you think that that's going to address a lot of the issues that in regards to GDOE meeting the audit deadlines?
At one point, I thought that might be a viable alternative. And maybe I'll address this, but you might be the only one who is aware of it. Because in this last audit, I broke all kinds of protocol. And I'm hoping when I broke protocol, it didn't cause that finding in the management audit. Because there was a time when Interior was looking down our throats, and I said, I'm tired of waiting for a trial balance. It's 10 months after the end of the fiscal year. It's 2 months after the audits were due, which is 9 months after the fiscal year. I can't wait anymore. And so I broke protocol, and I invited to the next status meeting the budget committee of the board. They shouldn't have been in there. But it was the only way that I could get them to understand that I needed them to put the screws on the superintendent and his DFAS, that I needed some action. And when they couldn't do that fast enough, I agreed to have the internal auditor break protocol and agree to come in to help. And within 2 weeks, he got the trial balance out they couldn't produce in 10 months. And then he was able to keep us moving, and we were able to work to do that. But this new management that's in, as Mr. Leongardo told me, we heard you loud and clear during the first status meeting. We've been laser focused on getting this thing on time, and we're going to be either on time or ahead of time. And when he beat the 1 month deadline for the March 3rd deadline for the trial balance, I'm very happy with the way that they're handling it. And I wish Senator Duenas was here. But this is something that you've heard all of us, you've heard me say about a number of times. It is imperative that this legislature pass legislation to provide parity between the salaries paid to those auditors in GDOE and DOA to the salaries that are being paid at the autonomous agencies. They're $15,000, $20,000 ahead at the start. They have ones that are making more than their senior auditors. That's not acceptable. And so they had a controller with a CPA last year, but within weeks, she was pirated off to one of the autonomous agencies. Unless you get parity between all of them, and there's nothing new, nothing that the auditors and accountants do at the autonomous agencies that's different from what these guys are doing in DOE or DOA. DOA right now has lost almost all of its accountants. They've either retired or they moved to other departments, and they're dealing with trying to find people. But until we get parity, they will always move to where you can't blame them, to wherever is going to pay them more. And so we've got to get parity between all of them. And especially important are DOE, DOA, and public health, because they're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars. And if they don't have accountants and auditors that are paid enough money so that they're not pirated away, or public health doesn't even really have a real financial group, they have hundreds of millions of dollars that's at risk. And I don't want to have another $42 million claim like in Homeland Security because of the lack of accountants and lack of program managers. We need to get people, but there needs to be parity, because without parity, they will be pirated constantly.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor. Senator Barnett, do you have any questions in regards to the audit?
Mr. Chair, I guess I'd like to first start, and I just want to thank Mr. Vincent, Auditor BJ Cruz, for your very diligent and hard work. I know we've had you in here a bunch of times expressing your frustration about agencies not complying in a timely manner, resulting in delayed audits. But I just want to ask, like, if you could characterize GDOE's willingness, unwillingness to comply with everything that you needed to do, because you said it reached a point where you said, hey, we're done. So what was it? Was it they were busy transitioning, or was there just like, were they stonewalling?
I don't think it was stonewalling. I think it was just they were overwhelmed. They lost their controller in the middle in early last year, just as the audit was starting. And so they needed someone that understood what canons should be produced by them. And they needed direction. Under Mr. Leon, they've obviously found it because they were able to move it. So they're there. It just needed to have somebody that was on them but please make sure that they get adequate. When we finally got US DOE to remove the third party, I was assured that savings was going to be used to be able to compensate their
It's
staff.
a $3 million savings, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
or 1.5, whatever it was. I know it was at one time the high was 3, but I think at the end it was 1.5. But whatever that number was, I was assured that they were going to invest that in their accounting and audit staff. And please, I've mentioned it to the new superintendent.
Yeah, no, I support it. I mean, we've been hearing it, many times over the last few years, addressing the pay with the auditors, specifically with GDOE, but I'm just not sure the appetite to entertain and pass that measure has been present in the body. So I want to ask first on the status of the federal grants. So we've heard even in the last year about federal grant money at risk of being lost, and then GDOE was able to later reprogram those funds or otherwise avoid losing them. So who knows what the status is on the 12.1 million in federal grants that the auditor says we're at risk of losing? From GDOE, if they could, yeah.
Senator, I know that from a standpoint from Audit's oversight, we've been tracking and looking at what's active, what's inactive. That's been communicated numerous times to management. We're hopeful that the different divisions took notice, and my understanding was there was some communication initiated, and they're engaging in several options to try to extend so that they can have access to safeguard the remaining balances.
So basically, the department's doing whatever it can to preserve this $12 million in federal grants.
That's my understanding.
And so you're just saying on the record that it has not been lost?
I can't confirm that if it's lost or not. I can tell you right now at this point, if we were looking at the system of it's being active and whether we can liquidate, that is not available upon us. But you can go back to the granting agency, and I'm hoping that our federal programs folks have to initiate that conversation to secure some of the remaining balances.
And it's really hard with the US DOE in a state of flux that it is. Because as with the example of the $54 million, in September of 24, they said no. In September of 25, they said yes. And so we had to make that voucher entry to reverse the loss to become now a surplus. So it's really hard. But when auditors look at it, and when EY looked at this, they saw that the period of performance and the grant period ended. And so therefore, the answer should be, it's a possibility of losing it. But sometimes it's possible that they can get some kind of extension. Hopefully they can. If not, then they're not going to be able to take advantage of that money. And I don't believe that they receive it ahead of time. That's reimbursable, I believe. I'm not sure they're returning 12 million as much as they're not going to receive 12 million.
That's correct. And I agree with the sentiment is there are some parameters with the grant. There comes fixed periods of performance. Behind the fixed periods of performance, there is late liquidation, which is 120 days after that period, where you have this time to finalize the administrative actions to bring obligations to expenditures and service delivery. And then even past that, there are special exceptions where if you communicate early with granting agencies, you're able to get in front of the issues, explain several circumstances with the challenges of expenditures. There have been, I'm aware, there has been approvals for no-cost extensions or even extensions. One of the things as auditors that we guide is when we have periods of performance, period of obligations don't change. So we have to be ensuring that when we have these grants that are executed and are supposed to be utilized in this period of performance, that we do have those expenditures, those procurement activities lined up and fully executed, so we're not taking extensions past what's allowable in statute.
Thank you for that. Mr. Duenas, you had talked about the $1 million in question cost and how that was derived from a sample that you had pulled. There was something else in the audit that I saw relative to procurement issues where you had pulled a sample and found that a bunch of these different procurements didn't meet the standard. But when you're talking about the $1 million in question costs, you had said that there could potentially be more. So are we looking at this same thing with some of the procurements that you guys put your eyes on?
Right. So there's actually, for each of the findings, they actually include whether they found question costs or not. So for example, finding 2024-005 dealt with equipment and real property management. They had question costs of $1,391. The one that you're talking about, the procurement, I think it's 2024-007. It dealt with procurement and suspension and debarment. There were no question costs for that in that particular finding. I think a majority of it came from cash management, which was a US DOE grant, 2024-008. There was $112,652 that were in question costs. Though there's another finding, 2024-009, that also dealt with the US DOE grant, dealing with procurement and suspension and debarment. That one had a little bit less than 7,000. So it really was, it depended, right? That's the answer to your question. It depended on the finding. The bulk of it actually came from finding 2024-011. It was a matching level of effort and earmarking for another ESF grant. That one had question costs of $826,000, give or take. But to answer your question, the procurement, it was a portion of it, a small portion of it.
Thank you. Superintendent or Mr. Franklin, if you're able to discuss this. So this $51 million reimbursement, the previous superintendent and the previous management team was very interested in communicating to the senators that they didn't think this was a surplus, that this was something that they already had a spend plan for. And so, kind of the narrative that's been occurring here in the body is that, we're giving GDOE all this money, and it's kind of, backed up by the audit, and they're not spending it all. Right, but when you talk to the GDOE management, at least the previous management, they say that it's not like they have a pile of $50 million sitting in the bank somewhere, that most of this money is already in a specific lane for expenditure. And so I can already see the writing on the wall that, there's possibly going to be another great shortchanging of the Guam Department of Education, because it's going to support the narrative that lowering the business privilege tax didn't impact the department. As you recall, the previous superintendent and his team had said that this would be disastrous for the Guam Department of Education. So I guess, Superintendent Wampat, do you believe that these are surpluses and that the legislature, should minus $60, $77 million from your next budget request? Because that's kind of where these guys are going. I don't necessarily support it, but.
No, I'm not going to ask you to reduce, of course, our request in the budget because of these quote-unquote surpluses. I would let you know, though, that although we don't have the details or the metrics of how we're going to apply the 51 million, that majority of them will go towards CIP, because that's our greatest need in our school facilities. So then, therefore, once we use that amount for school facilities, then moving forward with the budget, we've set our priorities of course, warm bodies, that, current employees, whether they're vacant slots for those who have retired or resigned. So we're budgeting that. Then the next level is that we're also budgeting for our CBAs, our utilities. We want to make sure, because what we found out for this year, that part of the facilities were reprogrammed for other things in the department, based on the statement made, by the previous management that they were underfunded or short by the legislature. So we're putting that back in again as a priority, because we got to keep the lights on and our schools open. Yeah. And then all of our other contracts that we definitely need, our food contract, our grounds maintenance, custodial maintenance, all those contracts are remaining. And like I said, and how I've also told the staff as they went out to work with the division heads and the school principals who've submitted their requests, is that a lot of it's going to be based, of course, on what we really need. We know there are wants, and we're hoping that the wants are which are the CIP projects that we will address with these additional funding that we currently have.
So basically, you're saying that there's a spend plan in place for the $51 million, and that pretty much, would you say every cent of that is
and
accounted for?
We're going to use it, you're right, primarily for CIPs, and that means that, should there be other problems further on down the years, then that will be addressed separately.
Do you, and I guess this is more of like a policy type question, but do you support the continuous upgrading of the facilities and maintenance division? Because this is kind of a pivot that the previous superintendent had supported, going from kind of moving away from this idea of privatization and strengthening the in-house facilities and maintenance team to be able to respond to all the different schools. Do you and your management team align yourselves with that effort, or is that something that you're looking at changing?
Well, we had that conversation among the team, and even with some of the senators, about the possibility of a public-private partnership. What hasn't been, I guess, discussed is the details in terms of what will the contract look like. Our employees at F&M, of course, are concerned that should that happen, would they potentially lose their jobs? And we want to make sure we protect those. We don't want to lose their jobs. We also, of course, with the new deputy, that she's set up this new tracking system. This is something she designed on her own. It's not something that she purchased a program to do this, to be able to make sure that we find out what all the requests are and how we're responding to them and how we're financing the materials and equipment that they're going to need to complete the work. So we're seeing that progress. We still don't know what's in the details in terms of how we want to set up this plan of either separate management to manage the schools. If it means partially that maybe they're going to hire an engineer as needed and not necessarily for us to hire one full-time when we don't need one. The other would be hiring, what we call master carpenters, master electricians, master plumbers, and the sort that we don't have in the department that can help supplement the department. So those are just something that we have not really written out the details, and I've asked actually legal counsel to assist us with setting up some kind of a template for these kind of contracts so we can see what it is that we need, because we're going to be the end users here. And we're finding that in some contracts that were executed previously, and as we're going through them now, is that there are some shortfalls, I guess, that end up being a concern that the work has not been done, or the expectation of what should be done are not being done because of what's in the contract. So we're really trying to hone in on those scope of works and contracts to make sure that the end users then are going to be, one, happy with the work being done, and two, that we will make the payment if it's being done, and if not, then we won't pay.
I assume you're talking about the master management contract, I think, and this is an idea that was kind of floated in the previous legislature, but the committee and the legislature as a whole decided to go the route of, reinstating the facilities and maintenance team, because that was kind of what the department had wanted. I also want to ask, if I can, the status of this is a different subject, can you provide a status update on the textbook audit?
So as Vince mentioned earlier, part of the specific conditions establishes greater responsibility of internal controls and places that with internal audit and with the OPA's oversight. So the textbook audit is one of those that is a collaborative audit. I know that my team is currently in the process of finalizing a draft. A draft has been in rough form provided to OPA. We're looking to set up a meeting hopefully this week, and that's what we agreed to discuss the next steps for finalization for that audit. So long story short, we're at the tail end of the process. Obviously, when you do collaborative audits, there's going to be sharing of audit findings and work papers, and then it goes through a quality assurance review, and then final approval from the public auditor. So where we're at is in the final report writing stages, and then it goes to report finalization after that.
Can you just also, last question, Mr. Chair, if you could provide an update. I know the audit had talked about GDOE's 22-year history as a high-risk grantee, and then we had previously been under the third party, which we saw removed, and then subsequently GDOE was able to pass the 6-month probation period, and I believe there were something like 17 different compliance items that the department has to meet in order to have that high-risk status removed. So if you could give us the status on the removal of the high-risk status?
Sure, and maybe the best place to start is where the public auditor did leave in a comment, where right now with the state of education, U.S. education being where it's at, there's uncertainty with the offices and the folks that we're dealing with, where we used to have an established communication lines with risk management. We know now that that office is no longer functional or is no longer within US Ed, and the people that were our points of contact are either retired or moved on from the department. So we're going through the process of reestablishing communication and getting that protocoled in. In terms of the high-risk designation, that's a long-standing designation. While we were able to remove specific conditions, the designation remains. So we've been working with our high-risk consultant. My understanding is prior to his departure, the former superintendent made that formal request for a removal of high-risk designation. What we want to do is, and you asked about the pending items that were, the pending items imposed of from the U.S. Department of Education managed by risk management was the embedding of what's called the REP, the Reconsideration Evaluation Plan. And what that was agreed upon framework that we needed to achieve so that we can say that we're ready to fully address all the high-risk deficiencies prior noted. The last time that we had that meeting with RMS, we were almost at 90% completion, which was almost a year ago. And we needed feedback to get to moving the ball finally through the goal line. So we do have, my understanding is that letter has been sent from the prior superintendent. We are following up with our counterparts at USED. We're currently working with our high-risk consultant to ensure that our efforts and our voices aren't heard to remove the conditions and to address the imposed deficiencies and finally get that to where they can consider another possible removal of the high-risk designation.
Could I just...
We're going to reset. We're going to recess real quick so that AV can reset, and then we'll come back, and we're in recess.